My grandson called me late at night, whispering into the phone, "Grandpa, I am at the police station. My stepfather beat me, but he is telling them I attacked him. My mom does not believe me." When I got to the station, the officer went pale and stammered, "I am sorry, sir, I did not know who you were." But by then, the war had already begun. My name is Jeremiah Brooks. I am 69 years old, and to the world I am just a retired old man driving a rusted 1990 Ford pickup truck, living in a wooden house that has seen better days. People look at my calloused hands and my gray beard, and they see someone who has given up. They see a harmless old man just trying to get by on a pension. They have no idea who I really used to be. They have no idea that I spent 30 years in federal courtrooms putting the most dangerous men in this state behind bars. They called me the Hammer because when I struck, I never missed. I hung up my suit a long time ago, but tonight, after receiving that phone call from my 16-year-old grandson Tevin, I knew the Hammer had to come out of retirement. Before I continue this story, please like and subscribe if you believe that nobody should ever mess with a grandfather protecting his kin. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I want to know how far justice travels. The phone rang at 2:14 in the morning. It is a sound that no parent or grandparent ever wants to hear because nothing good happens at 2:14 in the morning. I was awake instantly. The silence of my empty house was shattered by that ringing. I picked it up, my hand steady despite the hour. Grandpa Tevin's voice was barely a whisper, shaking with a terror I had never heard from him before. "Grandpa, he set me up. What happened, Tevin? Speak clearly, son." "He hit me, Grandpa. He punched me in the face because I didn't wash the dishes right. But then he called the cops. He told them I went crazy. He told them I was on drugs. They arrested me, Grandpa. I am scared. I did not ask who he was. I knew. Gavin Miller, my daughter Latoya's new husband, a man who smiled too much with his teeth and never with his eyes. A man who looked at my grandson not as a stepson but as a problem to be solved. Where are you? The 4th precinct. Please hurry." I hung up. I did not panic. Panic is for people who do not have a plan. I had a plan. I got out of bed and put on my flannel shirt and my work boots. I walked to the metal cabinet in the corner of my bedroom and unlocked it. Inside was my old hunting rifle. I stared at it for a moment. I did not load it. I did not take it to use it. I took it because the weight of it in my truck reminded me that the world is a dangerous place and sometimes you have to be dangerous back. I locked the house, climbed into my truck, and turned the key. The engine coughed and roared to life. I drove into the darkness toward the city, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. When I walked into the precinct, the fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing buzz. The air smelled of stale coffee and floor wax. It was a smell I knew well from my past life, but tonight it smelled like injustice. I saw them immediately. Gavin was standing near the front desk, leaning casually against the counter. He was wearing a sharp navy suit, looking like he had just stepped out of a business meeting, not a domestic dispute. He had a small, theatrical bandage on his hand. He was talking to the desk sergeant, a young officer with a buzz cut, and an attitude that screamed he had something to prove. And then I saw Tevin. My boy was sitting on a metal bench, cuffed to the rail. His left eye was swollen shut. His lip was split and bleeding. He looked small. He looked defeated. He looked like every young black boy who has realized that the system was not built for him. I walked straight toward him, my boots heavy on the linoleum floor. Grandpa Tevin choked out trying to stand up, but the cuffs jerked him back down. "Hey, old-timer, you cannot be back here," the officer behind the desk barked. He did not look up from his paperwork at first. I ignored him. I looked at Gavin. "What did you do to him, Gavin?" My voice was low, a rumble that usually made defendants sweat in the witness box. Gavin turned around. He looked me up and down, taking in my worn-out flannel shirt and my work pants. He smirked. A smug, arrogant smirk that made my blood boil. "Hello, Jeremiah. I see you finally dragged yourself out of bed. Your grandson went wild tonight. Attacks me in my own home. I had to defend myself. He is 16 years old, Gavin. Look at his face. That is not defense. That is a beating." The officer finally stood up. His name tag read Officer Riker. He was young, white, and clearly annoyed that an old black man was raising his voice in his station. "Sir, I told you to step back. This is a police matter. The suspect is being processed for domestic assault." Suspect. I turned my gaze to Riker. He is a minor, and he is evidently the victim of physical abuse. Have you photographed his injuries? Have you taken his statement, or did you just listen to the man in the suit? Riker laughed, a short, sharp bark of a laugh. Look, old man, I do not know who you think you are, but you need to sit down or leave. We know the type. Kid probably got high, got aggressive. Mr. Miller here is a respected businessman in this community. He has the right to feel safe in his own home. Mr. Miller here is a liar, I said, stepping closer to the desk. And if you process a minor without a guardian present and without documenting his injuries, you are violating Department Protocol Section 4, Paragraph 2. Riker's face turned red. Are you a lawyer now, old man? You drive a truck that belongs in a junkyard. Do not quote protocol to me. Sit down, or I will arrest you for obstruction of justice. Gavin chuckled, shaking his head. He is just senile officer. Ignore him. LaToya told me he gets confused. It is sad, really. He thinks he can save the boy, but we all know Tevin is a lost cause. It is genetics, probably. Or maybe just the environment he was raised in before I came along. That was it. The microaggression. The insult to my daughter, my wife, and my entire lineage wrapped in a fake concern. I looked at Gavin. I did not blink. You are right, Gavin. It is the environment, and you are the pollution. Riker came around the desk, hand resting on his taser. Okay, that is enough. You are causing a disturbance. Turn around. I am placing you under arrest. Tevin screamed. No, leave him alone. I did not move. I stood my ground, tall and straight, the way I stood when I addressed the Supreme Court 20 years ago. Officer Riker, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move, because right now you are about to end your career before it even starts. Riker grabbed my arm. I said, turn around. Suddenly a door slammed open in the back of the station. A booming voice echoed through the room. What in the hell is going on out here? It was the station chief, Captain Miller, a man with gray hair and a tired face, a man I had not seen in 10 years. A man who owed me his career because I cleared his name when he was falsely accused of corruption back in '95. Riker puffed up his chest, holding my arm tighter. Captain, this old man is interfering with a booking. He is threatening me and the victim. I was just about to put him in holding. Captain Miller squinted his eyes, adjusting his glasses. He looked at Riker, then he looked at me. The color drained from his face instantly. It was as if he had seen a ghost. His jaw dropped slightly. He walked forward fast, almost stumbling. Riker let him go. Now. Riker looked confused. But Captain, he is resisting. I said let him go, you idiot! Miller shouted, his voice cracking. Riker released my arm, stepping back as if he had been burned. Captain Miller stopped 2 feet in front of me. He swallowed hard. He looked at my old clothes, my gray beard, my tired eyes, but he knew. He saw past the disguise. Mr. Brooks, is that you? Hello, Captain, I said, smoothing my shirt sleeve. It has been a long time. Captain Miller looked at Riker, who was now pale and trembling. Riker, do you have any idea who this man is? This is Jeremiah Brooks. This is the Hammer. He was the federal prosecutor for this district for 25 years. He put away half the organized crime in this city. He knows more about the law than you will ever learn in 10 lifetimes. The silence in the station was absolute. You could hear the hum of the vending machine in the corner. Gavin's smirk vanished. He looked at the captain, then at me, then back at the captain. Wait, what? He is just a retired mechanic. LaToya told me he fixes cars. I looked at Gavin. I fix problems, Gavin. And right now you are the problem. Captain Miller turned to Riker. Why is that boy handcuffed to the bench? Mr. Miller said the boy attacked him. Uncuff him. Now. And get a medic to look at that face. If I find out you booked a minor with visible injuries without following protocol, I will have your badge on my desk by morning. Riker scrambled for his keys, hands shaking so bad he dropped them once before he could unlock Tevin. Tevin ran to me, burying his face in my chest, sobbing. I held him tight, feeling his skinny frame shake. I looked at the bruises on his neck up close. Finger marks. Large hands. I looked at the captain. I am taking my grandson home, Miller. Unless you want to charge me with kidnapping. No, sir. Of course not, sir. Take him. We will sort this out. Gavin stepped forward, trying to regain control. You can't just let him take the kid. That is my stepson. I have rights. LaToya will not stand for this. I turned to Gavin. My voice was ice cold. LaToya is not here, Gavin. And you are lucky she isn't, because if she saw her son's face right now, even she might wake up. You listened to me very closely. You hurt this boy. You lied to the police, and you tried to use your privilege to crush him. Gavin puffed his chest out, trying to look big, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He realized he was not dealing with a senile old man anymore. "You are threatening me, Jeremiah. I will sue you. I will take everything you have. I will make sure you never see Tevin again." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile I used right before I delivered a closing argument that sent a man to death row. "You can try, Gavin, but you should know something. I might drive an old truck and live in an old house, but that is because I choose to. Do not mistake my silence for weakness. You have started a war you are not equipped to fight." I guided Tevin toward the door. As I passed Riker, he was staring at the floor, unable to look me in the eye. "Sorry, sir," he mumbled. "I didn't know. Ignorance is not a defense, son," I said without stopping. We walked out into the cool night air. I put Tevin in the passenger seat of my truck. Grandpa Tevin wiped his eyes. "I didn't know you knew the captain." I started the engine. "There is a lot you don't know, Tevin, but you are going to learn." Tonight was just the beginning. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Gavin was standing on the steps of the police station watching us, his face twisted in hate. He was making a call, probably to my daughter, to spin his web of lies. Let him call. Let him lie. He thought he had won. He thought he had crushed us. But he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had woken up the hammer, and I was not going back to sleep until he was destroyed. The drive back to my house was silent. Tevin sat in the passenger seat of my old Ford, holding his side, staring out the window at the passing street lights. He looked smaller than I remembered. He was 16 years old, growing into a man's body, but right now he looked like a terrified child. I wanted to ask him everything. I wanted to know every detail of what had happened in that house. But I knew the law. I knew that trauma shuts a witness down if you push too hard too fast. So I just drove. I let the rumble of the engine and the darkness of the cab offer him the only safety he had known in a long time. We pulled up to my small wooden house on the outskirts of town. It was nothing like the pristine suburban fortress Gavin kept my daughter in. My porch needed painting and the yard was overgrown with wild grass, but it was safe. It was a fortress of a different kind. "Come inside, son. Let us get you cleaned up." We walked into the kitchen. The linoleum was cracked and the air smelled of old books and lemon polish. I pulled out a chair for him. "Sit down, Tevin. I need to see." He hesitated. He wrapped his arms around himself, protecting his torso. "It is okay, Grandpa. Just some bruises." "Tevin, I need to see." I used my prosecutor voice, firm but not angry. The voice that told juries to look at the evidence no matter how ugly it was. Slowly shaking, he reached for the hem of his t-shirt. He winced as he lifted it over his head. When the fabric cleared his skin, the breath left my lungs. The single yellow bulb hanging above my kitchen table illuminated a map of agony on my grandson's back. It was not just the fresh bruising from tonight. That was there, purple and angry, blooming across his ribs where Gavin had punched him. But that was not what made my blood run cold. It was the old scars. The crisscrossing lines of a belt buckle etched into his dark skin like a tally of cruelty. And lower down near his waist, where a shirt would easily hide them, there were small, round, circular burns. Cigarette burns. I reached out a hand but stopped myself before I touched him. My hand was trembling. For the first time in 20 years, the hammer was shaking. "Who did this, Tevin?" He looked at the floor. His voice was so quiet I almost missed it. "He calls it discipline, Grandpa. He says I am hard-headed. He says I need to learn respect." I walked around the table looking at the burns. They were deliberate, calculated, placed where no teacher or gym coach would ever see them. And the burns. Tevin flinched. "That is for when I get math problems wrong. He makes me stand in the corner for 4 hours. If I move, he uses the cigarette. He says pain helps memory." My vision blurred. A red haze of pure primal rage threatened to consume me. I wanted to grab my rifle. I wanted to drive back to the police station and finish what I started, but I pushed it down. Rage without direction is useless. Rage with a plan is a weapon. I went to the drawer and took out my digital camera. It was old, but it took high-resolution photos. I used it for insurance claims at the shop. "Stand up, Tevin. I need to document this." He stood. I took photos of every inch of his torso, the split lip, the swollen eye, the belt marks, the burns. Click, click, click. Each sound of the shutter was a nail in Gavin Miller's coffin. I was building a case file. I was not just a grandfather anymore. I was the prosecution. I made him some tea and put him in the spare bedroom. He fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted by terror. I did not sleep. I sat in my armchair in the living room watching the front door, my rifle leaning against the wall next to me. I waited. I knew they would come. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the pounding started. It was not a polite knock. It was a frantic, angry hammering that shook the doorframe. I stood up. My bones creaked, but I felt strong. I opened the door. Latoya was standing on my porch. My baby girl. She looked manic. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun and her eyes were wild. She was wearing a trench coat over her pajamas. Behind her, standing near his expensive German SUV, was Gavin. He had changed his suit, but he still wore the bandage on his hand. He looked calm. He looked like a man who was watching a show he had directed. "Where is he?" Latoya screamed. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She tried to push past me into the house. I blocked the doorway with my body. I am 6'2". I do not move easily. He is sleeping, Latoya, which is more than he has done in a long time. Give him to me. You have no right. You kidnapped my son. I looked at my daughter. I looked for the smart, independent woman I had raised, the girl who wanted to be a doctor, the girl who used to laugh at my terrible jokes. I did not see her. I saw a stranger. A woman so desperate to keep her perfect life that she had blinded herself to the monster sleeping in her bed. He called me Latoya. He was at the police station. Gavin had him arrested. Gavin stepped forward slightly, his voice smooth and reasonable. "Latoya, honey, tell him. Tell him what Tevin did." Latoya turned back to me, tears streaming down her face. But they were not tears for her son. They were tears for her husband. He attacked Gavin Daddy. He went crazy. He was on drugs. I found the pills in his room. Gavin showed me. Gavin planted them. I said, my voice flat. Just like he planted the idea in your head that your son is a criminal. "Do not talk about my husband like that," Latoya shrieked. "Gavin has done everything for that boy. He pays for his private school. He buys him clothes. He tries to teach him discipline. And this is the thanks he gets. A black eye and a police report." I laughed. It was a dry, bitter sound. "Discipline. Is that what you call it?" I stepped aside. Not to let her in, but to give her a clear view. "You want to see discipline? Come here." Latoya hesitated. "Come here, Latoya. Look at what your husband calls discipline." She stepped onto the threshold. I pointed toward the spare room where the door was slightly ajar. Tevin was sleeping on top of the covers. His shirt was off because the fabric hurt his burns. "Look at his back, Latoya." She looked. For a second, her eyes widened. She saw the belt marks. She saw the purple bruising that wrapped around his ribs like a snake. She saw the burns. But then she blinked, and the wall came up. The denial slammed shut like a steel trap. She looked away. She looked at the floor. She looked at Gavin. "He fell off his bike," she whispered. "What did you say?" "He fell off his bike last week. He came home all scraped up. That is what those marks are." I grabbed her shoulders. I shook her. Not hard, but enough to try and rattle her soul awake. "Bike accidents do not leave belt buckle shapes, Latoya. Bike accidents do not leave cigarette burns on a child's waist. Look at it. Look at what you are allowing." She pulled away from me, shoving my chest. "Stop it. Stop trying to blame Gavin. Tevin is a liar. He hurts himself to get attention. He hurts himself to make Gavin look bad because he is jealous. He is jealous that I finally found a good man." I stared at her. My heart broke in that moment. It cracked down the middle. This was not blindness. This was choice. She was choosing the lie because the truth was too terrible to face. If she admitted what those marks were, she would have to admit that she had married a monster. She would have to admit that she had failed her son, and Latoya was too weak to carry that weight. Gavin walked up the steps. He put a hand on Latoya's shoulder, claiming her, owning her. "We are leaving now, Jeremiah. Send the boy out." I stepped back into the doorway, blocking them both. "No." Gavin's smile faltered. "Excuse me. He is not going anywhere with you. Not today. Not ever." Gavin pulled out his phone. He held it up, the camera lens pointed directly at my face. The red recording light was blinking. "I am recording this, Jeremiah. You are unlawfully detaining a minor against the wishes of his legal guardian. That is kidnapping. That is a felony. Record all you want, Gavin. You can add it to the file." Listen to me, old man, Gavin hissed, leaning in close so the phone picked up his voice clearly. You have 24 hours. If Tevin is not back in my house by tomorrow morning, I will call my lawyer. I will file charges. I will have you thrown in jail for kidnapping, and I will strip you of any visitation rights you have left. You will die alone in a cell, and you will never see him again. LaToya was sobbing now, hiding her face in Gavin's chest. Please, Daddy, just give him back. Do not make us do this. I looked at my daughter one last time. I realized then that I could not save her. Not yet. She was drowning, and if I tried to grab her now, she would pull us all under. I had to save the boy first. Get off my porch, I said quietly. Gavin laughed. The clock is ticking, Jeremiah. 24 hours. Or I bring the police back. And this time your friend the captain won't be able to help you because the law is on my side. He guided LaToya down the steps. They got into the luxury SUV. As they backed out of the driveway, Gavin stared at me through the window. He drew a finger across his throat. I slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. The war had officially begun. He thought he had the law on his side. He thought he had the money and the power. But he forgot one thing. He was playing checkers. I was playing chess. And I had been playing this game since before he was born. I walked to the kitchen table, picked up my phone, and dialed a number I had not called in 10 years. It rang twice. Hello, a gravelly voice answered. Frank. It is Jeremiah. There was a pause. The hammer. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need a favor, Frank. I need you to find out everything there is to know about a man named Gavin Miller, and I mean everything. I hung up the phone. I looked toward the room where Tevin was sleeping. 24 hours. I had 24 hours to build a fortress that Gavin Miller could not break down. I walked to my office and opened the old safe hidden behind the bookshelf. I pulled out my legal pads and my case files. I dusted off the desk. I sat down and uncapped my pen. Let him call his lawyers. Let him bring his threats. Court is in session. The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed Frank. It was 4 a.m, and the silence of the house was suffocating. I needed answers. I needed to know why a man like Gavin Miller, who wore Italian suits and drove German cars, was so obsessed with destroying a 16-year-old boy. Frank picked up on the first ring. He was an old-school private investigator, the kind who worked out of a basement and smelled like stale tobacco, but he could find a needle in a haystack if you paid him enough. Jeremiah. I found it, Frank said, his voice rasping. I followed the money just like you said. It wasn't hard once I knew where to look. You remember that trust fund Clara set up before she passed? My heart skipped a beat. Clara, my late wife. A woman who worked 2 jobs her entire life to make sure our family would never know the poverty we grew up in. She had been the saver, the planner, the visionary. I knew she had put money aside for Tevin, but I had never looked at the specifics. I assumed it was for college books or a first car. I remember I said, "What about it?" "It is not just a college fund, Jeremiah. It is substantial, $500,000. Accumulated interest from some land she bought down in Georgia back in the 80s. She was smart, man. She locked it up tight. 500,000. Hundreds. The number echoed in the empty kitchen. It was life-changing money. Here is the kicker, Frank continued. Tevin gets full access when he turns 18. But there is a clause. A tiny, nasty little clause that usually protects the kid, but in this case, it is a death sentence. If the beneficiary is deemed mentally incompetent or is incarcerated for a felony before the age of 18, the control of the trust reverts to the legal guardian until the beneficiary turns 25. The room spun. It all made sense. The abuse, the false police reports, the accusations of drug use. Gavin did not just hate Tevin. He was trying to build a paper trail. He was trying to prove Tevin was unstable or a criminal so he could get his hands on Clara's money. He wasn't trying to discipline the boy. He was trying to cash him out. Gavin Miller was drowning in debt, and my grandson was his winning lottery ticket. All he had to do was destroy the boy's life to cash it. I hung up the phone. My blood was boiling, but my mind was ice cold. This was not a family dispute anymore. This was a robbery in progress. I went to the window. The sun was just starting to burn through the morning mist. I saw a black SUV turn onto my dirt road, followed closely by a white van with tinted windows. It was not the police. It looked like something military. They were here. I walked to the living room where Tevin was sitting on the couch staring at his knees. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with fear. "Grandpa, who is that? Stay behind me, Tevin. Do not say a word." I unlocked the front door and stepped onto the porch. The SUV stopped and Gavin stepped out. He was wearing sunglasses and that same smug smile. He waved a piece of paper in the air like a flag of victory. Behind him, 2 men stepped out of the white van. They were huge. They wore black tactical uniforms with badges I did not recognize. They had handcuffs on their belts and pepper spray canisters strapped to their legs. They looked like mercenaries. "Good morning," Jeremiah, Gavin called out, walking up the path. "I hope you packed his bags. Get off my property, Gavin." "I am afraid I cannot do that. I have a court order, emergency custody, signed by Judge Wilkins this morning. It states that Tevin is a danger to himself and others. It grants me immediate authority to transport him to a secure facility for behavioral modification." He pointed to the 2 men in black. "These gentlemen are from the Secure Path Transport Service. They specialize in troubled youth. They are going to take Tevin to a wilderness camp in Utah. It will be good for him. Fresh air, hard work, no distractions. Utah. He wanted to ship my grandson halfway across the country to one of those places where kids disappeared and came back broken, or didn't come back at all. He wanted to isolate him. He wanted to make sure I could not protect him." Tevin screamed from the doorway, "No, Grandpa, please do not let them take me." The 2 men in black started walking up the steps. One of them pulled a pair of zip ties from his belt. "Sir, step aside," the bigger one said. "We have a legal order to secure the minor." I did not move. I looked at the paper in Gavin's hand. "You got an emergency order without a hearing," I said, my voice steady. "You lied to a judge. You told him the boy was violent." "I told him the truth," Gavin sneered. "And now the law says he belongs to me. Grab him!" The 2 men lunged forward. One of them shoved me hard against the railing. The wood creaked. I stumbled, but I did not fall. They reached for Tevin. My grandson kicked and screamed, clinging to the doorframe, his fingers turning white. "Grandpa, help me!" That was it. The line was crossed. I reached behind the porch swing where I had leaned my Mossberg shotgun just 10 minutes ago. I racked the slide. The sound was loud, metallic, and unmistakable. It cut through the morning air like a thunderclap. "Get back!" The 2 men froze. They were mercenaries, but they were not ready to die for a paycheck. They backed down the steps, hands raised. Gavin's face went pale. He stumbled backward, almost tripping over his own feet. "Are you crazy, old man? Put that down. You are going to prison for this." I raised the barrel, pointing it at the dirt, but making it clear I was ready to use it. "You listen to me, Gavin. This is my property. In this state, we have something called the Castle Doctrine. It says I have the right to use reasonable force to protect myself and the occupants of my home from intruders who intend to do them harm." I nodded at the 2 men in black. "These men are not law enforcement. They are private contractors. They forced their way onto my porch and they assaulted me. That gives me the right to defend this house." One of the transport agents looked at Gavin. "Mr. Miller, you did not say the grandfather was armed. We do not do armed standoffs." "Grab the kid!" Gavin screamed, his voice cracking. "He won't shoot. He is a lawyer, not a killer." "Try me," I roared. My voice shook the leaves on the trees. "Step 1 foot on this porch again, and you will find out exactly what kind of lawyer I was." Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police sirens. I had called the sheriff the moment I saw the van turning down the road. Gavin looked at the approaching lights, then at me. "You are finished, Jeremiah. The police will see you waving a gun, and they will put you down." The sheriff's cruiser skidded to a halt in the dust. 2 deputies jumped out, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon. Drop it now." I slowly placed the shotgun on the porch floor and raised my hands. I did not step down. I stood in front of Tevin, shielding him with my body. "It is secured, officers. I am protecting my grandson from a kidnapping attempt." The deputies moved in. One of them recognized me. It was Deputy Harrison, a man whose father I had fished with years ago. "Mr. Brooks, what is going on here?" Gavin stepped forward, waving the paper. "Arrest him. He pulled a gun on us. I have a court order to take my stepson. He is interfering with a court mandate." Deputy Harrison took the paper from Gavin. He looked at it. Then he looked at the 2 men in black uniforms. "Who are these guys?" "Transport Service," Gavin said. "To take the boy to Utah." Harrison looked at me. "Jeremiah, is this true?" I lowered my hand slowly. "Deputy, look at the order. Look at the signature date. It was signed at 6 a.m. this morning by Judge Wilkins. Since when does family court open at 6 a.m. on a Saturday? Harrison frowned. He looked closer at the paper. And look at the jurisdiction, I continued. That order grants custody for a medical evaluation within the county limits. It does not authorize transport across state lines to a private facility in Utah. If these men take that boy out of this state, they are committing federal kidnapping, and you would be an accessory. Harrison looked at Gavin. His eyes narrowed. He is right, Mr. Miller. This order says evaluation at County General. It says nothing about Utah. Gavin sputtered. That is a technicality. The intention is to get him help. The law is made of technicalities, Gavin, I said. And you just tripped over a big one. Harrison handed the paper back to Gavin. Mr. Miller, you need to leave. If you want to modify this order, you do it on Monday when the court is actually open. And tell your hired muscle to get back in their van before I arrest them for trespassing. Gavin's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He looked at Tevin, who was peeking out from behind my back. Then he looked at me. This is not over, Jeremiah. You think you are smart. You think you won. But you just bought yourself a few days. I will get a new order. I will get a federal order if I have to. And when I do, I will make sure they put you in a home where you can rot while I spend that boy's money. He turned and marched to his SUV. The two men in black glared at me but retreated to their van. As they drove away, kicking up dust, I felt my knees go weak. I sat down heavily on the porch swing. Tevin sat next to me, trembling. You saved me, Grandpa. I put my arm around him. I felt the thinness of his shoulders. I felt the weight of the responsibility resting on me. For now, son. I saved you for now. But as I watched the dust settle on the road, I knew Gavin was right about one thing. This was not over. He was desperate now. He knew that I knew about the money. He knew the clock was ticking until Tevin turned 18. A desperate man is a dangerous man. He would not come back with paper next time. He would come back with something worse. I looked at my shotgun. I looked at my grandson. Go inside, Tevin. Pack your things. We are not safe here anymore. Where are we going, Grandpa? To war, son. We are going to war. The phone rang again later that afternoon, and I knew before I answered that the war had shifted fronts. It was Latoya. My baby girl sounded like a ghost of herself, her voice thin and brittle, cracking with a panic that tore at my heart. Daddy, please, she sobbed. You have to bring him back. Gavin cut off the cards. I went to the grocery store to buy milk, and the card was declined. I called the bank, and they said my name had been removed from the account. I have no money, Daddy. Not a cent. I gripped the phone tight, feeling the plastic creak under my fingers. This was the classic move of an abuser. Isolate the victim. Remove their independence. Make them beg for basic necessities. Gavin was tightening the noose not just around Tevin, but around my daughter too. He is punishing you, Latoya, I said, my voice gentle but firm. He is doing this to control you. He wants you to hurt so you will do his dirty work for him. It is working, she wailed. He told me he would turn them back on when Tevin comes home. He said he cannot trust me with our money if I cannot even control my own son. Daddy, please. Just bring him back. He won't hurt him again. He promised. He promised. The lie of every battered spouse in history. I cannot do that, honey. If I bring Tevin back, he will disappear into the system or worse. You saw his back. You saw the burns. That was an accident, she screamed, suddenly shifting from begging to attacking, parroting the words Gavin had fed her. You are making it up. Gavin says you are confused. He says you are getting old and seeing things that aren't there. He says you are senile, Daddy. He says you are ruining Tevin because you are lonely and you want someone to keep you company in that old house. You are teaching him to be a thug. The words hit me like physical blows. Senile, lonely, teaching him to be a thug. These were not Latoya's thoughts. This was Gavin's poison dripping from her lips. He had spent months, perhaps years, rewriting reality in her mind until I was the villain and he was the savior. Latoya, listen to yourself, I said. I was a federal prosecutor for 30 years. I know what evidence looks like. I am not senile. I am the only one seeing this clearly. You are ruining my marriage, she hissed. You are jealous because Gavin is successful, because he is a businessman, and you are just a retired mechanic. You want us to be miserable. I did not correct her. I did not tell her about the money I had or the power I still held. She was not ready to hear it. She was too deep in the fog. I love you, Latoya, I said softly, But I love Tevin enough to save him, even if it means you hate me. I will transfer money to your personal account so you can buy food. But I am not returning the boy. I do not want your money, she spat. I want my husband to stop being angry at me. Fix this, Daddy, or do not ever speak to me again. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling a heavy stone settle in my gut. He had turned my own child into a weapon against me. He had stripped her of her resources and her dignity, leaving her with nothing but fear. I transferred $5,000 to an old account I knew she still had access to, hoping she would see it before Gavin did. But I knew money would not break the spell. Only the truth would do that. And the truth was coming. Sunday morning arrived with a heavy gray sky that matched my mood. I had been going to the First Baptist Church of Decatur since I was a boy. It was my sanctuary. The place where I had married Clara and where we had baptized LaToya. I needed the peace of the pews. I needed to feel the community around me. So I put on my best Sunday suit, polished my shoes, and told Tevin to stay locked inside with the curtains drawn. I walked into the church sanctuary expecting the usual warm greetings, the handshakes, and the nods of respect. Instead, I walked into a wall of ice. The conversation stopped the moment I stepped through the double doors. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. People I had known for 40 years looked at me and then quickly looked away, whispering behind hymnals. I walked down the center aisle, my back straight, refusing to shrink under their gaze. I heard snippets of their whispers like hissing snakes. That is him, keeping a drug addict in the house. Poor LaToya. Gavin is a saint for putting up with it. I found my usual seat in the third row. Mrs. Gable, a woman whose son I had helped get into law school years ago, gathered her purse and moved to the other end of the pew, leaving a wide, empty space between us. It was a shun, a coordinated community rejection. Then I saw him. Gavin was sitting in the front row wearing a light gray suit that cost more than most people here made in a month. He was holding LaToya's hand. She looked pale and small beside him. He turned his head slightly and caught my eye. He winked, a subtle, arrogant wink that said, "I own this room." The organ music swelled and Pastor Jenkins ascended the pulpit. Jenkins was a younger man, ambitious and fond of expensive watches. I had heard rumors that the church building fund was being managed by Gavin's real estate firm, but I had never paid it much mind. Now I paid attention. Jenkins started his sermon. Usually he preached about forgiveness or charity. Today he preached about order. Brothers and sisters, Jenkins boomed, his voice echoing off the rafters. The Bible tells us that the family is the cornerstone of society. And within that family there must be order. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. He paused, looking meaningfully out at the congregation. We are living in troubled times. Times when the youth are led astray by rebellion. Times when they turn to drugs and violence. And it is a tragedy when the elders, those who should know better, protect this sin instead of correcting it. The congregation murmured in agreement. I felt the eyes boring into the back of my neck. We have a family in our midst hurting today. Jenkins continued, his eyes landing directly on me. A mother separated from her child. A father trying to guide a wayward son only to be met with interference. We must pray for those who are confused, for those who in their old age have lost the path of wisdom and encourage rebellion instead of righteousness. We must pray that they return the stolen sheep to the shepherd. He was talking about me. He was using the pulpit, the word of God, to shame me into handing Tevin back to his abuser. Gavin had not just poisoned my daughter, he had bought the church. He had donated enough money or promised enough favors to turn the moral center of my life into another weapon. My hands clenched into fists on my knees. I looked at the cross hanging behind the pulpit. I thought about Clara and how she loved this church. I thought about Tevin hiding in my house, terrified. I stood up. The sound of my movement was loud in the quiet church. Jenkins stopped speaking. The entire congregation stared at me. I stepped out of the pew. I did not look down. I did not look ashamed. I looked directly at Pastor Jenkins. I held his gaze until he blinked and looked away, nervously adjusting his microphone. Then I looked at Gavin. I saw the triumph in his eyes. He thought he had shamed me out of the building. He thought I was leaving in defeat. I walked down the aisle, my footsteps steady and rhythmic. I walked past the people who judged me without knowing the truth. I walked past the friends who had turned their backs. I walked out the double doors and into the sunlight. I did not leave because I was ashamed. I left because God was not in that building anymore. He was back at my house protecting a scared boy, and I had work to do. I drove straight to Frank's office. It was Sunday, but in our line of work there are no days off. Frank was waiting for me, a stack of files on his desk. The air was thick with smoke, but it smelled like progress. "Tell me," I said, sitting down without taking off my coat. Frank tapped a file with his yellow-stained finger. "Your boy Gavin is not just a real estate agent, Jeremiah. He is a gambler. And a bad one." I leaned forward. "Go on." I pulled his financials. Not the ones he shows the IRS, the real ones. He has 5 shell companies all bleeding money. He leveraged himself to the hilt buying properties in the swamp, thinking they would be rezoned for commercial use. They were not. He is sitting on acres of mud that aren't worth the taxes he owes on them. "That explains the debt," I said. "But why the urgency?" Frank opened the file, revealing a photocopy of a promissory note. It was not from a bank. It was handwritten on a napkin signed with a thumbprint, because he didn't borrow from a bank to cover his losses, Jeremiah. He went to the Sharks, specifically the Vargas Syndicate out of Miami. He owes them $200,000. Principal and interest. The Vargas Syndicate. I knew them. I had put their cousins away in '98. They were ruthless. They did not sue you when you didn't pay. They broke your legs, then they burned your house down with you inside. When is it due? Frank looked at me, his expression grim. 30 days ago. He bought an extension. Probably told them he had a big payday coming. He promised them the money by the 1st of the month. I looked at the calendar on the wall. The 1st was in exactly 4 weeks. "That is why he needs the trust fund," I whispered. "He needs Tevin's money to pay off the Sharks. If he doesn't get it, they will kill him. And he is desperate," Frank added. "Desperate men make mistakes, but they are also dangerous. If he can't get the money from the kid, he might try to get it another way. Insurance, maybe. Or he might just snap." I stood up, pacing the small room. It all fit. The pressure on LaToya, the attempt to send Tevin away, the smear campaign against me. He needed total control so he could drain the trust fund before the Sharks came collecting. He was running out of time. "He is cornered," I said, "and a cornered rat bites." "What is the play?" Jeremiah, Frank asked, lighting another cigarette. "We let him think he is winning," I said. "We let him think I am isolated, broken, and shamed. We let him get confident. And while he is busy celebrating, we build the cage. I need everything, Frank. I need the names of the loan sharks. I need the dates of the transactions. I need proof that he has been falsifying his income to LaToya. I need to know where every cent went." "I am on it," Frank said. "But watch your back, Hammer. If Vargas is involved, this just got a lot heavier than a custody battle." I walked out of Frank's office and got back in my truck. The church service would be over by now. Gavin would be shaking hands, accepting sympathy, playing the role of the beleaguered father. Let him play. I drove home, taking the long way, checking my mirrors. I was not just fighting a bad father anymore. I was standing between my family and organized crime. Gavin had brought wolves to our doorstep, hoping they would eat us and leave him alone. I pulled into my driveway. The house looked quiet. I unlocked the door and called out, "Tevin, Grandpa." He came running from the kitchen. I looked at him. I saw the fear, but I also saw trust. He believed I could fix this. "Pack your books, son," I said. "Tomorrow, you are going to school." But Grandpa, Gavin said, "I know what Gavin said. But Gavin is a liar. And starting tomorrow, we are going to prove it." I went to my study and opened my old Rolodex. I found the number for the state attorney general. We went to law school together. It was time to call in some markers. Gavin Miller wanted a fight. He wanted to use the system against me. He was about to learn that I was the system. Monday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The sky was a brilliant blue and the air was crisp. I made Tevin a hearty breakfast of eggs and grits. He ate in silence, his leg bouncing under the table, a nervous habit he had developed since moving in with Gavin. He was dressed in his school uniform, pressed and neat. He looked like exactly what he was, a good kid trying to survive a bad situation. "Ready, son?" I asked, grabbing my keys. "I think so, Grandpa. Do you think he will be there?" "At the school?" "I don't know. But if he is, I will be right there with you. Nobody touches you, Tevin. Not anymore." We climbed into the Ford. I had spent Sunday afternoon making some modifications to the old truck. Modifications that Gavin and his goons would not expect. We drove toward the city, the radio playing low jazz, the engine humming its steady rhythm. We were 3 blocks from the private school entrance when I saw the blue lights in my rearview mirror. 2 police cruisers. One behind me, one cutting in front to block the road. They didn't just want me to pull over. They wanted to box me in. I slowed down and pulled to the curb. "Keep your hands visible, Tevin. Do not make any sudden movements. Do not reach for anything. I know, Grandpa." I turned off the engine and placed my hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. I watched in the side mirror as 2 officers approached. They were not the local deputies I knew. These were city cops, and they had their hands resting on their holsters. Their posture was aggressive, tight. "Driver, roll down the window," the first officer barked. He was tall with a thick neck and eyes that looked like flint. I rolled it down. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem? License and registration, now." I moved slowly, narrating my actions. "I am reaching for my wallet in my back pocket. I am handing you the license." The officer snatched the ID from my hand. He didn't even look at it. He handed it to his partner and leaned into the window, sniffing the air. "Step out of the vehicle, both of you." Why, I asked, my voice calm. I was not speeding. Was not. "My tags are current. What is the probable cause for this stop?" "We received an anonymous tip," the officer said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Report of a vehicle matching this description transporting narcotics near a school zone. That is a felony. Step out, now. Narcotics." The word hung in the air like smoke. It was a classic setup. An anonymous tip, a aggressive, stop a search. Gavin was not just trying to get custody anymore. He was trying to get Tevin locked up. If Tevin had a drug charge near a school, the trust fund clause would activate immediately. Gavin would win. I looked at Tevin. He was trembling. "Do as they say, son. Stay calm." We stepped out. They pushed us against the side of the truck. They patted us down, rough hands searching pockets, legs, waistbands. They found nothing on our persons. "Search the vehicle," the lead officer commanded. His partner opened the passenger door. He didn't look in the glove box. He didn't look under the mats. He reached directly under the seat where Tevin had been sitting. It was a precision search. He knew exactly where to look. "Got it," the partner yelled. He pulled his hand out. In his grip was a clear plastic bag filled with white powder. It looked like a brick of cocaine. "Bingo," the lead officer sneered. He grabbed Tevin's arm and spun him around, slamming him against the truck. "You are in a lot of trouble, kid. Possession with intent to distribute in a school zone. That is 10 years minimum. No." Tevin screamed, tears bursting from his eyes. "That is not mine. I swear. I never saw that before. Grandpa, tell them." "Shut up, junkie," the officer shouted, pulling his handcuffs out. "You are going away for a long time." They reached for my wrists, too. "You are under arrest for trafficking and child endangerment, old man." I did not resist. I did not shout. I just looked at the lead officer with a look of absolute pity. "Before you click those cuffs, officer," I said, my voice cutting through the panic like a razor blade, "you might want to look at the dashboard." The officer paused. "What?" I nodded toward the windshield. "Right there behind the rear-view mirror." He looked. Nestled against the glass, blinking with a steady red light, was a high-definition dash camera. And not just front-facing. It had an interior lens covering the entire cabin. "That camera records 24 hours a day to a secure cloud server," I said. "It has audio and video. It recorded my grandson and me getting into the truck this morning. It recorded that the space under that seat was empty. And it recorded your partner reaching under there without probable cause based on a tip that I guarantee you came from a burner phone bought by a man named Gavin Miller." The officer froze. His eyes darted to his partner, who was holding the bag of powder like it was a live grenade. "Furthermore," I continued, my voice rising in authority, "I am requesting an immediate field test of that substance, and I want the bag fingerprinted before it goes into evidence. If my grandson's prints aren't on it and yours are, you are going to have a very hard time explaining that to internal affairs." The partner looked nervous. "Sarge, maybe we should test it." "Test it," I commanded. The lead officer glared at me, but he nodded. His partner walked to the cruiser and got a field test kit. He opened the bag and dropped a pinch of the white powder into the blue liquid. We all watched. If it turned purple, it was cocaine. The liquid stayed blue. He shook it. Nothing happened. He tasted a tiny grain on his finger. "It is sugar, Sarge. It is powdered sugar." The silence on the street corner was deafening. Tevin let out a sob of relief that sounded like a balloon deflating. "Sugar," I repeated. You stopped a retired federal prosecutor and his minor grandson based on a false tip, and you just tried to arrest us for possessing baking ingredients. The late officer's face went from angry red to a pale, sickly white. He looked at the camera, blinking on the dash. He realized the trap he had walked into. "Federal prosecutor," he whispered. "Jeremiah Brooks," I said. "And right now I am dialing the district attorney. He was my intern in '98. I think he will be very interested to hear about this stop." I pulled out my phone. The officers took a step back. "Sir," the lead officer stammered, "if it is just sugar, then there is no crime. We were just following a lead. We have to be careful around schools. You understand." "I understand that you were used as a weapon by a desperate man," I said. "I understand that you didn't do your due diligence. Get in your car, get out of my sight, and tell whoever called in that tip that they missed." They didn't argue. They practically ran to their cruisers. They pulled away without sirens, leaving us standing on the curb next to my old truck. Tevin was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. He tried to frame me, Grandpa. He tried to put me in jail. I hugged him. I held him tight until the shaking stopped. He tried, son, and he failed. But this tells us something important. What, Grandpa? It tells us he is terrified. He used sugar because he couldn't get real drugs or because he was too scared to carry them. He is making mistakes. He is sloppy. And a sloppy enemy is an enemy we can beat. I looked at the bag of sugar lying in the gutter where the cop had dropped it. Gavin had escalated to felony framing. He was willing to destroy a child's life to pay his debts. "Get in the truck, Tevin. We are going to school. You have a math test to ace. And I have a meeting with the Attorney General." We drove the last 3 blocks. I watched Tevin walk into the school building, his head held high. He was a survivor, just like his mother used to be, just like me. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the AG. "Walter, it is Jeremiah. Clear your schedule. We have a RICO case to build, and it starts with a bag of sugar and a corrupt real estate developer." Gavin wanted a war. He wanted to use the law as a sword. He was about to find out that I was the shield and the hammer combined, and I was done playing defense. Tuesday evening arrived with a heavy silence hanging over my house. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the phone. The failed drug bust had shaken Gavin, but it had not stopped him. He was a creature of ego, and wounded ego is a dangerous fuel. I knew he was planning his next move, probably something violent, something final. I had to get ahead of him. I had to pull him into the open where he felt safe enough to take off his mask. I picked up the receiver and dialed his number. My hand was steady, but my heart was beating a slow war drum against my ribs. He answered on the 3rd ring. "What do you want, Jeremiah?" His voice was clipped tight with anger. I let out a long sigh, a sound of defeat that I had practiced in the mirror. "I am tired, Gavin. I am just a tired old man. I cannot fight the police. I cannot fight the courts. I cannot fight you." There was a pause. I could almost hear him smiling on the other end of the line. "Finally coming to your senses, old-timer." "I think so. Look, Tevin needs a father. He needs stability. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I am just standing in the way of what is best for him. You are damn right you are. Bring LaToya over tonight. Come for dinner. I will cook. We can sit down like civilized men and I will sign the papers. I will sign the transfer of custody. I just want this to be over." I let the silence hang there. I baited the hook with his own arrogance. "Dinner? Huh? All right, Jeremiah, we will come. But do not try anything stupid. If I smell a trap, I will burn your life down." No traps, Gavin. Just a grandfather realizing he is out of his depth. 7 o'clock. I hung up. I did not smile. There is no joy in trapping a rabid animal. There is only necessity. I spent the afternoon preparing. I cooked. I made collard greens, mac and cheese, and pot roast. Comfort food. The kind of food LaToya grew up on. The kind of food that disarms you and makes you feel safe. I set the table with Clara's good china. I wanted everything to look perfect. I wanted Gavin to feel like the king of the castle, coming to accept the surrender of a peasant. At 6:30, I went to the mantel above the fireplace. There sat an old brass clock, a family heirloom that had not worked in 20 years. But it was working now. Hidden behind the face directly inside the number 6 was a high-definition camera lens. It was connected to a secure server streaming live to a private cloud account. I checked the feed on my tablet in the bedroom. The picture was crystal clear. It covered the entire dining room table. At 7 sharp, the black SUV pulled into the driveway. Gavin stepped out wearing a casual polo shirt and slacks, looking like a man ready for a round of golf at the country club. LaToya stepped out behind him. She looked thin. Her eyes were puffy and red. She walked with her head down a few paces behind her husband like a servant. I opened the door. "Welcome, come in." Gavin walked past me without shaking my hand. He looked around my small living room, sniffing the air. "Smells like grease," he commented. "It is pot roast, Gavin. Have a seat." He sat at the head of the table. My seat. He did it instinctively, claiming dominance. LaToya sat to his right, keeping her eyes on the tablecloth. Tevin was in his room. I had told him to stay there with his headphones on. I did not want him to hear what was about to be said. I brought out the food. I served them. I played the role of the submissive host. "Can I get you a drink, Gavin? I have some whiskey." He looked at me with amusement. "Whiskey. What do you have, Jeremiah?" "Some moonshine you brewed in the bathtub." I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. It was a 15-year reserve worth more than his car payment. I had received it as a gift from a senator I defended years ago. Gavin's eyes widened. He knew the label. "Well, well," he whistled. "I guess you do have some taste after all. Pour me a glass. Make it a double." I poured. I watched him drink. The alcohol hit his empty stomach and mixed with his narcissism. He relaxed. He leaned back in my chair, spreading his arms. "This is good, Jeremiah. Real good. You know it is a shame it had to come to this." I sat down opposite him, directly in the line of sight of the clock. "It is a shame," I agreed. "You know what your problem is, Jeremiah." Gavin swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "You represent a dying breed. The old guard." I looked at him calmly. "How is that?" "You are the generation of black men who were content with scraps. You worked hard, you kept your head down, you bought your little house, and you thought that was enough. You were obedient, you were poor, but you were proud." He took a large swallow of the whiskey. "But the world changed, Jeremiah. Pride does not pay the bills. Ambition does. Ruthlessness does. You look at me and you see a bad guy. I look at me and I see a winner. I see someone who takes what he wants because he deserves it." LaToya made a small sound, a whimper in her throat. She stared at her plate, her fork pushing a piece of roast beef around in circles. She did not look at me. She could not bear to see her husband insulting her father in his own home. Gavin looked at her with contempt. "Look at her. She is weak just like you. She thinks the world runs on feelings. It runs on power, Jeremiah. That is all. Power and leverage. And right now, I have both." He laughed, a harsh sound that grated against the walls. "You tried to fight me with that little shotgun stunt with the dash cam. Cute. Really. But you forgot who I am. I am a businessman. I deal with reality. And the reality is, you are an old man living in a shack, and I am the future. Tevin needs discipline. He needs a father who understands how the world works, not a grandfather who teaches him to be a victim." I gripped my napkin under the table. Every word was a lash. But I needed him to go further. I needed the motive. "You are right, Gavin," I said softly, forcing the words past the bile in my throat. "I am old. I do not understand this new world. But there is one thing I do not understand. What is that old timer? Why Tevin?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "You hate him, Gavin. I see it. You hate the way he looks. You hate that he isn't yours. You hate that he is smart. So why fight so hard for custody? Why not just let him go? Why not let him live here with me and wash your hands of him? You could have a peaceful life with LaToya. Why do you need him so badly?" Gavin drained his glass. He slammed it down on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. His eyes were glassy and hard. The mask slipped completely. "Because of the money, you old fool." LaToya's head snapped up. "Gavin." "Shut up, LaToya," he snapped without looking at her. He turned his gaze back to me, his face twisted into a sneer of pure greed. "You think I care about raising that brat? You think I want to spend my weekends correcting his behavior. I do not give a damn about him, but I give a damn about $500,000. The room went deadly silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantel. $500,000, I repeated. That trust fund, he laughed. That sweet little nest egg your dead wife left behind. I did my research, Jeremiah. I know about the clause. I know that if the beneficiary is incapacitated or institutionalized, the guardian gets control. Control of the principal. Control of the interest. He leaned across the table, his breath smelling of expensive bourbon and rot. I have debts, Jeremiah. Big debts. And that money is sitting there gathering dust, waiting for a kid who does not deserve it. He is 16. He doesn't need $500,000. I need it. I built this family. I deserve a return on my investment. So the plan was never to help him, I said, guiding him deeper into the grave he was digging. Help him. Gavin scoffed. The plan is to send him to Utah. There is a facility there run by a friend of mine. They specialize in difficult cases. They will diagnose him with whatever I tell them to. Oppositional defiant disorder, schizophrenia. It doesn't matter. Once the paperwork is signed, he goes away. He stays there until he is 25, and by the time he gets out, there won't be a dime left in that trust. LaToya let out a sob. It was a sound of pure heartbreak. You want to lock him up for the money. Gavin spun on her. Yes, for the money, LaToya. For the house you live in. For the clothes on your back. Do you think this lifestyle is free? I am drowning, and your son is the life raft. So stop crying and grow up. We are going to take custody. We are going to ship him off, and we are going to live like kings. He turned back to me. Now where are those papers, Jeremiah? I am ready to sign. I sat there for a moment, looking at him. I looked at the man who had beaten my grandson, who had terrorized my daughter, who had insulted my existence. I looked at the clock on the mantel. The red light inside the lens was invisible to the naked eye, but I knew it was there, blinking, recording, streaming. I did not stand up. I did not shout. I just smiled. There are no papers, Gavin. His brow furrowed. What? There are no custody papers. I did not invite you here to surrender. Gavin stood up, knocking his chair back. Then, what is this? Why are we here? I pointed to the clock. You are here to confess, Gavin. And you just did. To the whole world. He looked at the clock. He looked at me. Confusion turned to realization, and realization turned to fury. What are you talking about? That clock is a camera, I said, my voice returning to the iron baritone of the hammer. It is live streaming to a private server, and it is also streaming to the phone of the district attorney who is listening to us right now. You just admitted to fraud conspiracy to commit kidnapping and child endangerment. You just admitted that you plan to falsely imprison a minor to embezzle his inheritance. Gavin's face went white. He lunged for the clock, grabbing it off the mantel and smashing it onto the floor. Brass gears and glass shattered everywhere. You senile old bat. Do you think that matters? It is your word against mine. It is in the cloud, Gavin, I said, standing up slowly. Smashing the camera does not delete the footage. It is already saved. It is already evidence. Gavin looked around the room like a trapped animal. His eyes landed on LaToya, who was sitting frozen at the table, tears streaming down her face. LaToya, let us go. Now. LaToya did not move. She looked at her husband. She looked at the man she had defended, the man she had chosen over her own blood, and for the first time in years the fog cleared. You sold my son, she whispered. You beat him, and you tried to sell him. Get in the car, Gavin roared, stepping toward her, raising his hand. That was his mistake. I stepped between them. I caught his wrist in midair. My grip was like a vice. Years of working on engines had kept my hands strong. You will not touch her, I said. Not in my house. Not ever again. Gavin tried to pull away, but he couldn't. He looked into my eyes, and for the first time he saw the truth. He saw that the old man in the flannel shirt was not a victim. Let go of me, he hissed. I twisted his arm, forcing him back. Get out, Gavin. The police are on their way. He stumbled back, rubbing his wrist. He looked at LaToya. If you stay here, LaToya, you lose everything. I will take the house. I will take the car. I will leave you on the street with nothing but the clothes on your back. LaToya stood up. She wiped her face. She looked at me, then at Gavin. I already lost everything, she said, her voice shaking but clear. I lost my son's trust. I lost my father's respect. I lost myself. The house is just wood and brick, Gavin. You can have it. Gavin sneered. You are pathetic. Both of you. You think a recording will stop me. I have lawyers. I have connections. You have nothing. He turned and stormed out the door. We heard the SUV engine roar to life and tires screech on the asphalt as he sped away into the night. Silence returned to the wooden house. Latoya stood in the middle of the room, shaking. She looked at the smashed clock on the floor. She looked at the empty bottle of whiskey. Then she looked at me. Daddy, she whispered. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the money. I walked over to her. I did not hug her yet. She needed to stand on her own for a moment. I know you didn't, sugar, but you knew he was mean. You knew he hurt Tevin, and you looked away. She collapsed into the chair, putting her head in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I am so sorry. I was so afraid of being alone. I wanted it to work so bad. I put a hand on her shoulder. It is over now, Latoya. He showed us who he is. Now we have to show him who we are. I looked toward the hallway. Tevin was standing there. He had taken off his headphones. He had heard everything. He walked over to his mother. He didn't say a word. He just hugged her. Latoya clung to him, begging for forgiveness. I watched them. My family broken but finally reunited in the truth. But the night was not over. Gavin was running scared now, and a man like that does not just run away, he burns the bridges behind him. I went to the window. I saw headlights in the distance, not the police. Gavin had said he had debts. He had said he had connections. I checked my phone. The stream had ended, but the file was secure. I sent it to the AG. Then I went to the back room and opened the gun safe again. Tonight, we had won the battle of the truth. But the physical battle was just beginning. Gavin Miller was not going to go to prison quietly. He was going to try and take us with him. I loaded the rifle. Let him try. The silence in the dining room was heavy enough to crush a man. The broken pieces of the clock lay scattered on the floor like the fragments of my daughter's life. Gavin stood there, chest heaving, his eyes wild with the adrenaline of a cornered rat. Latoya was still sitting at the table, but she was no longer looking down. She was looking at the man she had married. She was looking at the man she had defended against her own father and son. And for the first time in years, she was seeing him clearly. The fog of manipulation had lifted, leaving only the cold, hard edges of the truth. You just wanted the money, she whispered. Her voice was trembling so hard it sounded like glass breaking. It wasn't about love, it wasn't about building a family, it was just about the money. Gavin let out a short, cruel laugh. He adjusted his cufflinks, regaining his composure now that the mask was off. He looked at her not with affection or even pity, but with the annoyance one might feel for a broken appliance. Grow up, Latoya. Do not be so pathetic. She stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking, but she forced herself to stand. She walked toward him. I tensed, ready to spring. I knew violence was coming. I could smell it on him like the whiskey on his breath. Answer me, she screamed, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. Did you ever love me? Or was I just the way to get to Tevin? Was I just the key to the vault? Gavin looked her up and down. His lip curled in a sneer that twisted his handsome face into something demonic. Love you. Look at you, Latoya. You are a desperate woman with a baggage train of a son and a senile father. You were drowning when I found you. I threw you a rope. I gave you a lifestyle you could never afford on your own. I gave you dignity. You gave me lies, she spat. You beat my son. You isolated me from my father. You made me hate my own blood. And you let me, Gavin roared. You let me do it because it was easier than being a single mother again. You let me do it because you liked the cars and the house and the status. Do not play the victim now. You were a willing accomplice until the money ran out. Latoya raised her hand. It was an instinctual move, a slap meant to reclaim some shred of her dignity. But Gavin was faster. He was a predator, and predators are always ready to strike. He caught her wrist in midair. He squeezed it until she cried out in pain. Do not ever try to touch me, he hissed. Then he moved. It happened so fast that even I, with all my years of watching violent men, could barely track it. He released her wrist, and in the same motion he swung his open hand across her face. The sound was sickening. It was the sound of flesh hitting flesh, of force meeting vulnerability. It cracked through the room louder than the gunshot outside earlier that morning. Latoya crumbled. She did not just fall, she collapsed as if her strings had been cut. She hit the hardwood floor hard, her hand flying to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. A trickle of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. Immediately, the beast inside me woke up. My muscles coiled, my hands clenched into fists that felt like iron hammers. I wanted to tear him apart. I wanted to break him bone by bone until he understood the pain he had inflicted on my family. I took a step forward, my vision tunneling down to his throat. But I stopped. I stopped because I was Jeremiah Brooks. I was a man of the law. And I knew that if I touched him now, if I beat him into the hospital, he would win. He would press charges. He would sue. He would spin the narrative that I was the violent one, that I had attacked him and he was defending himself. I needed him to be the only aggressor in the room. I needed his violence to be unprovoked and undeniable. Imbecile, he spat, looking down at my daughter on the floor. You stupid woman, you really thought I loved you. I tolerated you. I tolerated your neediness and your brat son because I thought there was a payoff at the end. But you ruined it. You and your old man ruined everything. LaToya looked up at him, tears mixing with the blood on her chin. Get out, she whispered. Get out of my house. I want a divorce. I want you out of my life. Gavin threw his head back and laughed. It was a manic sound devoid of any humor. Your house. You think this is your house, LaToya? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He threw it at her. It fluttered down, landing beside her on the floor. Read it. LaToya picked it up with shaking hands. She tried to focus her eyes. What is this? It is a second mortgage, Gavin said, his voice dripping with venom. On the house your mother left you. That sweet little Victorian in the city, the one you were so proud of, the one you thought was your safety net. LaToya read the paper. Her face went gray. This has my signature on it. But I never signed this. I never authorized a loan. Gavin shrugged, adjusting his jacket. You sign a lot of things, LaToya. Birthday cards, school permission slips, tax forms. It is amazing what a man can do with a scanner and a little bit of patience. I mortgaged that house to the hilt 6 months ago. The bank owns it now, or rather, they will own it when I stop making the payments next week. He leaned down, getting right in her face. You wanted to kick me out. You wanted to leave me. Go ahead. But you are leaving with nothing. I spent the equity. It is gone. I spent it on the lawyers, I spent it on the debts, and I spent it on women who know how to keep their mouths shut. If you divorce me, you get the debt. If I go to prison, you get the foreclosure. You will be on the street, LaToya. You will be back in the gutter where you belong. LaToya let out a sound that I will never forget. It was not a scream. It was a wail of absolute despair. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire future disintegrate. Her mother's house was the only asset she had. It was her legacy. It was supposed to be Tevin's inheritance, and he had stolen it. He had forged her name and stolen her birthright. He stood up, towering over her, enjoying her pain. So here is the deal, he said. You are going to tell the police that you lied. You are going to tell them your father is crazy and that Tevin attacked me. You are going to fix this, LaToya. Or I let the bank take the house and I leave you destitute. I had heard enough. I moved. I did not run. I walked. I walked with the heavy, inevitable gait of an executioner approaching the scaffold. I walked past the table, past the broken clock, past the shattered remains of my daughter's life. I reached down and grabbed Gavin by the lapels of his expensive Italian suit. I did not hit him. I slammed him against the wall. The drywall cracked behind his head. Pictures rattled. The house shook. He tried to push me off, but I was fueled by the rage of ancestors. I pinned him there, my face inches from his. You listen to me, boy, I whispered. My voice was a low growl, barely human. Gavin's eyes went wide. He gasped for air, clawing at my hands. Get off me, old man. I tightened my grip. You think you are smart, I hissed. You think because you can forge a signature and beat a woman that you have power. You have nothing. You just confessed to mortgage fraud, bank fraud, and forgery while standing in a house that is bugged by a federal prosecutor. Gavin struggled, kicking at my shins, but I didn't feel it. You threatened my daughter with homelessness. I continued, my voice dropping even lower so only he could hear the death sentence I was pronouncing. You think that house matters. You think money matters. I have spent 40 years accumulating favors and power you cannot even imagine. I will buy the bank that holds that mortgage. I will buy the debt you owe to the sharks in Miami. I will buy the air you breathe if I have to. I leaned closer until our noses touched. You just signed your own death warrant, Gavin. Not your life. Your life is too easy to take. I am talking about your freedom, your reputation, your future. By the time I am done with you, you will wish you were dead. You will beg for a cell just to get away from me." I let him go. I shoved him toward the door. He stumbled, tripping over his own feet, crashing into the door frame. He looked back at me, and for the first time I saw it. True terror. He looked at Latoya, still weeping on the floor. He looked at Tevin, who had emerged from the hallway holding a baseball bat, his eyes hard as flint. He realized he was outnumbered. He realized he was outmatched. "You are crazy," he stammered, adjusting his suit, trying to regain a shred of dignity. "You are all crazy." "Get out," I said, pointing to the darkness outside, "before I forget that I am a man of the law." Gavin scrambled out the door. He ran to his SUV, fumbling with his keys, dropping them once before managing to unlock the door. He jumped in and revved the engine. He backed out of the driveway so fast he took out my mailbox. I watched his taillights disappear into the night. I closed the door and locked it. I turned the deadbolt. Then I walked over to my daughter. She was still on the floor, clutching the forged mortgage document to her chest, rocking back and forth. "Daddy," she sobbed, "I am sorry. I am so sorry. He took everything. Mama's house. He took Mama's house." I knelt down beside her. My knees cracked, but I didn't care. I wrapped my arms around her. She felt frail, brittle like a bird that had flown into a window. "He didn't take everything, sugar," I whispered into her hair. "He took things. Things can be replaced. He didn't take us." "But the house," she wailed. "I signed it. It looks like my signature. I was so stupid. I trusted him with the mail. I trusted him with everything." "Shh." I soothed her, rocking her like I did when she was a baby. "It is fraud, Latoya. It is a crime. We will get it back. I promise you. I will spend every dime I have to get it back." Tevin walked over. He dropped the bat and sat down on the other side of her. He put his arm around his mother. "It is okay, Mom," he said, his voice surprisingly deep, surprisingly strong. "We do not need the house. We have Grandpa." Latoya looked at her son. She saw the bruises on his face, the evidence of her own failure to protect him. She broke down completely, burying her face in his neck, howling with grief and regret. I let them cry. I let the poison drain out of the wound, but my mind was already moving. Gavin was gone, but he was not finished. He was desperate now. He knew about the recording. He knew I was coming for him. He would go to his lawyer. He would try to strike first. I stood up. "Tevin, stay with your mother. Get her some water." I walked to my office. I picked up the phone. It was late, but David Chen, the slimy lawyer Gavin used, would be awake. Bad men never sleep well. I did not call Chen. I called the one person Chen feared more than the Bar Association. I called his wife, who happened to be the head of the ethics committee at the state board. "Hello," a sleepy voice answered. "Margaret, it is Jeremiah Brooks. I apologize for the hour, but your husband represents a client named Gavin Miller, and I believe you should know that Mr. Miller just confessed to multiple felonies involving a minor. If David files any motions tomorrow based on Miller's lies, he will be named as a co-conspirator in a federal RICO case." There was silence on the line, then a sharp intake of breath. "I will handle it, Jeremiah. Thank you." I hung up. I had cut off his legal air supply. Now I had to cut off his money. I called Frank. "Frank, wake up. It is time to leak the financials. Send everything you have on Gavin's debts to his business partners. Send it to the bank that holds his construction loans. Send it to everyone. By tomorrow morning, I want him toxic." "Done," Frank said. I walked back into the living room. Latoya was sitting on the couch, Tevin holding her hand. They looked up at me. "What do we do now?" Daddy, Latoya asked. "Now," I said, checking the load in my rifle. "Now we wait for him to make his final mistake." Gavin Miller had declared war on my family. He had beaten my grandson. He had robbed my daughter. He had insulted my honor. He thought he was a wolf among sheep. He was about to find out he had walked into the den of a lion, and the lion was hungry. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and stale anxiety, a scent I had known for 40 years. But today, I was not standing behind the prosecution table with the weight of the federal government behind me. I was sitting at the respondent table, an old man in a Sunday suit, watching a shark circle my family. Gavin had hired David Chen. Seeing Chen walk into the courtroom was like seeing a vulture land on a carcass. Chen was known in legal circles not for his brilliance, but for his brutality. He was the kind of lawyer who buried the truth under a mountain of paperwork and twisted facts until they snapped. He wore a suit that cost more than my truck and a smile that looked like it had been sharpened with a file. Gavin sat next to him, looking the picture of the grieving, concerned stepfather. He had shaved. He wore a modest tie. He kept his head bowed, staring at his hands as if praying for guidance. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Latoya sat beside me, clutching my hand so hard her knuckles were white. Tevin was not allowed in the room yet. He was waiting in a side chamber guarded by a bailiff. The judge entered. Judge Harrison Vance. He was young, barely 40, appointed by a governor who owed favors to the real estate lobby. I knew his type. Ambitious, impatient, and easily swayed by appearances. He looked at Gavin and saw a peer, a successful businessman dealing with a messy family. He looked at me and saw a relic. A problem. All rise. The bailiff droned. Judge Vance sat down and shuffled the files. We are here for an emergency custody hearing regarding the minor Tevin Brooks. Mr. Chen, you have the floor. Chen stood up, buttoning his jacket. His voice was smooth, like oil on asphalt. Your Honor, we are here because a young boy is in danger. My client, Mr. Miller, has been the sole provider and father figure to Tevin for years. He has paid for his private education, his health care, his housing. He loves this boy as his own. But recently, due to the toxic influence of the grandfather, Mr. Jeremiah Brooks, Tevin has spiraled out of control. Chen walked to the bench, handing over a thick binder. I am submitting evidence, Your Honor. Exhibit A, Tevin's academic records. As you can see, he is failing every subject. He has been suspended twice for fighting. Exhibit B, a psychological evaluation conducted by Dr. Aris stating that Tevin suffers from violent outbursts and is at high risk for gang affiliation. I stiffened. I had seen Tevin's report cards. He was a straight-A student. He loved math. These papers were forgeries created by the same network Gavin used to fake mortgages. Objection, I said, standing up. My voice boomed in the small room. Those documents are fabricated. I have his real report cards in my truck. Judge Vance looked over his glasses at me. Mr. Brooks, you will speak when it is your turn. Sit down. Chen smiled, a tiny, victorious twitch of his lips. As I was saying, Your Honor, the boy is troubled. But the real danger is not the boy. It is the environment he has been kidnapped to. Mr. Jeremiah Brooks may have been a prosecutor once, but that was a long time ago. Today he is an unstable elderly man living in a dilapidated property filled with firearms. Chen pulled out a tablet and connected it to the court screen. A video played. It was the footage from my porch the day I stopped the transport agents. It showed me holding the shotgun, racking the slide, screaming at the men to get back. Edited perfectly, it did not show the men lunging at me. It only showed an angry old black man waving a gun. This man, Your Honor, threatened licensed care workers with a deadly weapon, Chen narrated. He has a history of resisting authority. He believes he is above the law because of his past career. He is radicalizing this boy, teaching him to hate authority, to use violence to solve problems. He is isolating him from his mother and his legal guardian in a shack that does not even meet fire safety codes. I looked at Latoya. She was shaking, crying silently. That is not true, she whispered. Daddy saved him. Chen turned on her, his eyes cold. Mrs. Miller is unfortunately a victim as well, Your Honor. A victim of her father's domineering personality. She is confused, emotionally unstable, and currently lacks the financial means to provide a home for her son because she has been cut off by the very husband she is now betraying under her father's pressure. It was a masterclass in character assassination. In 10 minutes, he had painted me as a violent, senile extremist and Gavin as a saint trying to save a drowning family. Judge Vance looked at the video, still frozen on the screen with me holding the shotgun. He looked at Gavin, who wiped a fake tear from his eye. Mr. Brooks, the judge said, turning to me, do you deny that you brandished a firearm at these men? I stood up slowly. I do not deny protecting my home, Your Honor. Under the Castle Doctrine, I have the right to defend my property from intruders who intend harm to a minor. Those men were not law enforcement. They were mercenaries hired to kidnap my grandson. Kidnap, Judge Vance scoffed. Mr. Miller is the legal guardian. He has the right to transport the child to a medical facility. You pointed a loaded weapon at people doing their job. That shows a severe lack of judgment. I tried to present my evidence. I tried to speak about the abuse that burns on Tevin's back, the trust fund. Your Honor, I said, my voice tight with controlled rage. This is not about custody. This is about money. My grandson has a trust fund that Mr. Miller is trying to access to pay illegal gambling debts. I have evidence of microaggressions, physical abuse, and financial fraud." Judge Vance waved his hand dismissively. "Mr. Brooks, this is family court, not a criminal trial. We are not here to discuss gambling debts or conspiracy theories. We are here to decide where this boy sleeps tonight, and frankly, looking at the evidence, I am terrified for his safety in your care. But the abuse, I insisted. Look at the photos of his back." I held up the folder with the pictures of the cigarette burns. Chen interjected smoothly. "Those injuries were self-inflicted." "Your Honor, as stated in the psychological report, Tevin cuts and burns himself to seek attention. It is a tragedy, but it is exactly why he needs professional help, not a grandfather who enables his delusions." The judge nodded. He closed the folder without even looking at the photos I offered. He had made up his mind. He saw a suit versus a flannel shirt. He saw a current businessman versus a washed-up lawyer. "I have heard enough," Judge Vance said, banging his gavel. "The court finds that it is in the best interest of the minor to be returned to his primary residence immediately." "No," Latoya screamed, standing up. "You cannot do that. He will hurt him." "Sit down, Mrs. Miller," the judge barked, "or I will have you removed." He turned back to the papers, signing them with a flourish that felt like a knife in my gut. "I am granting temporary sole custody to Mr. Gavin Miller. Tevin Brooks is to return to the Miller residence for a period of 1 week for reconciliation and evaluation. During this time, Mr. Brooks, you are to have no contact with the minor. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from the Miller property. We will reconvene in 7 days to see if a permanent arrangement is necessary." 7 days. 7 days alone with the monster who wanted to destroy him. 7 days to force him to sign papers or to stage an accident. "Your Honor, this is a death sentence," I said, my voice trembling with fury. "You are sending a lamb back to the butcher." "One more word, Mr. Brooks, and I will hold you in contempt," the judge warned. "Bailiff, bring in the boy. A key." The side door opened. Tevin walked in. He looked at me, his eyes full of hope. He thought I had won. He thought we were going home to eat leftovers and study math. When he saw the look on my face, the hope died. The bailiff grabbed his arm and steered him toward Gavin. "No," Tevin said, pulling back. "No, I am staying with Grandpa." Gavin stood up and walked over. He put a hand on Tevin's shoulder, squeezing tight right where a bruise was healing. "Come on, son. Time to go home," Tevin screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of pure terror. He thrashed, trying to break free. "Grandpa, help me. Do not let them take me. He will kill me, Grandpa." I stepped forward, my body moving on instinct to protect my blood. The bailiff put a hand on his gun. "Back off, Mr. Brooks. Do not make this worse." I froze. If I fought now, I would be arrested. If I was in jail, I could not save him. I had to watch. I had to stand there powerless while my grandson was dragged kicking and screaming out of the courtroom by the man who wanted to end him. Tevin's eyes locked onto mine. They were wide, pleading, filled with a betrayal that broke my soul. "Grandpa," he wailed as the doors closed behind them. I stood there alone in the middle of the courtroom. My hands were gripping the edge of the defense table so hard the wood groaned. I felt a tear run down my cheek, hot and angry. David Chen packed his briefcase, snapping the lock shut with a satisfied click. "Better luck next time, Jeremiah," he whispered as he walked past me. "Maybe you should stick to fixing cars." I did not answer. I could not speak. The rage was a physical thing expanding in my chest, choking off my air. I looked at Judge Vance, who was already checking his watch, bored with the drama he had just caused. "You made a mistake," I thought. "You all made a mistake. You took my boy. You used the law to break my family." I turned and walked out of the courtroom. Latoya was in the hallway, sobbing into her hands. I walked past her. I did not have time for tears. I walked out into the sunlight. It was blinding. 7 days. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. But they forgot one thing. The hammer does not break. I walked to my truck. I got in and slammed the door. I pulled out my phone and dialed Frank. "Frank, get the team. Get the hacker. Get the ex-cops. Get everyone." "What happened?" Frank asked. "They took him." There was a silence on the line. Then Frank spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "So we are done playing nice." "We are done," I said, starting the engine. "Burn it down, Frank. Burn Gavin's life to the ground. I want to know what he eats, where he sleeps, and who he owes money to. I want to know where the bodies are buried. I pulled out of the parking lot, my tires screeching. 7 days. I would not sleep. I would not eat. I would not rest until I tore Gavin Miller's world apart brick by brick and brought my boy home. The court had failed us. The law had failed us. Now it was time for justice, my kind of justice. The 7 days that followed were the longest of my life. Every minute that ticked by on the clock on my wall felt like an hour. Every hour felt like a day. I sat in my study surrounded by silence, but in my mind I could hear my grandson screaming. I knew Gavin Miller. I knew how bullies worked. They did not stop until they broke their victim completely. And he had 7 days to break a 16-year-old boy. While I sat there staring at the phone, waiting for a call that would not come, my grandson was living in a nightmare beneath the manicured lawn of a suburban estate. Tevin was locked in the basement. It was a finished basement with carpet and drywall intended for a home theater or a game room, but Gavin had stripped it bare. He had removed the furniture, the electronics, and even the light bulbs, leaving only a single mattress on the floor in the corner. He had taken Tevin's phone, his watch, and his shoes. He had locked the heavy door from the outside, turning a family home into a black site prison. For the first 2 days, Gavin did not even go down there. He just left him in the dark. Tevin told me later that the silence was the worst part. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that made his own heartbeat sound like thunder. He had no way to tell time. He had no way to know if it was day or night. He just sat on the mattress, hugging his knees, trying to remember the sound of my voice, trying to remember that I had promised to come for him. Then the noise started. On the third night, Gavin set up large speakers against the basement door. He blasted heavy metal music at maximum volume. It was a relentless wall of screaming guitars and pounding drums that vibrated through the floorboards and rattled Tevin's teeth. It did not stop. It played for hours, looping over and over, denying him even a moment of rest. Sleep deprivation is a torture technique used by rogue states and apparently by desperation-ridden stepfathers. Gavin starved him. He did not bring him meals. He brought him water just enough to keep him alive, but not enough to make him strong. Once a day he would slide a tray with a single piece of dry bread or a half-eaten apple through the door like he was feeding an animal. He wanted Tevin weak. He wanted him confused. He wanted him to reach a point where he would do anything just to make it stop. LaToya tried to go down there. I know she did. I found out later that she stood by the basement door crying, begging Gavin to let her see her son. But Gavin had taken her keys. He had threatened to throw her out on the street if she touched that door handle. He told her it was tough love. He told her Tevin needed to break to be fixed. And in her fear and her weakness, she let him do it. She listened to the music pounding through the floor, and she did nothing. But while Gavin was playing warden, I was playing general. I did not sleep. I did not eat. I turned my dining room table into a command center. I called Frank and told him to bring everyone. I need a ghost Frank. I need someone who can walk through digital walls. Frank brought me Marcus. Marcus was a kid I had prosecuted 10 years ago for hacking into the state banking system. He was a genius who had used his talents for the wrong reasons, but after he served his time, I helped him get a job in cybersecurity. He owed me. Marcus set up his laptops on my table, the blue light of the screens illuminating his focused face. Frank sat next to him with stacks of paper files, his chain-smoking habit filling the room with a haze that reminded me of the old precinct back rooms. "We are going to dissect him," I told them. "I want to know where every dollar comes from and where every dollar goes. I want to know who he talks to. I want to know what he eats for breakfast. I want to find the leverage that will bury him." We started digging. We pulled his tax returns going back 10 years. They were a mess of deductions and losses that looked suspicious even to a layman, but to a trained eye, they screamed fraud. We found shell companies registered in Delaware and the Caymans. Construction firms that had no employees and no equipment, but moved hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. "He is laundering money," Marcus said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Look at these transfers, Jeremiah. He takes cash deposits from accounts linked to known gambling syndicates, moves them through a fake contracting company, and then pays himself a salary as a consultant. It is classic washing. Keep digging," I said. "Find the debt. Find the pressure point." Frank found the connection to the Vargas syndicate. He found surveillance photos of Gavin meeting with men in cheap suits at diner parking lots. He found emails threatening violence if payments were not made. "He is terrified," Frank said, pointing to a printout of an email chain. "Look at this. He promised them a lump sum of $500,000 by the end of the month. He told them he had an inheritance coming. He was selling Tevin's future to save his own skin. He had already promised the money. If he didn't deliver Tevin's trust fund, he was a dead man. That was why he was so desperate. That was why he had escalated to kidnapping and torture. We worked for 4 days straight. We built a file that was thicker than a Bible. We had proof of tax evasion, wire fraud, and money laundering. We had enough to put him away for 20 years. But we needed Tevin. We needed him safe. On the 5th day, the music in the basement stopped. The silence must have been deafening to Tevin. He lay on the mattress, weak from hunger, his lips cracked from dehydration. The door at the top of the stairs opened. Light flooded into the dark room, blinding him. Gavin walked down the stairs. He was holding a flashlight and a clipboard. He looked fresh. He looked rested. He looked like a man who had convinced himself that what he was doing was necessary. He walked over to the mattress and kicked it. "Get up." Tevin struggled to his feet. He had to lean against the wall to stay upright. Gavin shined the flashlight in his face, examining his handiwork. "You look terrible, son." "I want to go home," Tevin croaked. "I want my grandpa." Gavin laughed. "Grandpa isn't coming. Grandpa forgot about you. He is probably sitting on his porch right now drinking whiskey and glad to be rid of the burden." "That is a lie, is it? Has he called? Has he come to the door?" "No, it is just you and me, Tevin. And it is time to end this." Gavin held out the clipboard. On it was a single sheet of paper covered in dense legal text. "Sign this." Tevin squinted at the paper. "What is it?" "It is an emancipation request," Gavin lied smoothly. "It tells the court that you want to be treated as an adult, that you want control of your own finances immediately so you can pay for your own treatment." Tevin shook his head. "I do not need treatment. I am not signing anything without Grandpa reading it." Gavin's face darkened. He dropped the act. "You listen to me, you little waste of space. You are going to sign this paper. It transfers control of your trust fund to me as your legal guardian until you are 25. It says you are mentally incompetent to manage your own affairs." "No," Tevin said, backing away. "That is my mom's money. Grandpa told me." Gavin grabbed him by the shirt collar and slammed him against the concrete wall. Tevin's head bounced off the stone. "Your mother is dead," Gavin hissed, his face inches from Tevin's. "And if you do not sign this, your grandfather is going to be next." Tevin froze. "What?" "I know where he lives," Gavin whispered. "I know he drives that old truck down River Road every morning. Old trucks have accidents all the time. Brakes fail. Steering columns lock up. It would be a tragedy. An old man dying alone in a wreck because his grandson was too stubborn to help the family." Tevin started to cry. "Do not hurt him, please. Then sign the paper," Gavin roared, shoving the pen into Tevin's hand. "Sign it, and I will let him live. Sign it, and I will let you out of here. You can go live with him. I do not care. I just want the money." Tevin looked at the pen. He looked at the paper. He thought about me. He thought about the man who had raised him, the man who had stood on the porch with a shotgun to protect him. He believed Gavin. He believed that this monster was capable of anything. I need to read it," Tevin stammered, trying to buy time, trying to think like I had taught him. "You have 10 seconds, Gavin said, pulling a switchblade from his pocket. He clicked it open, the blade glinting in the flashlight beam. "Or maybe I will just cut a finger off. One for every minute you waste." Tevin trembled. He put the pen to the paper. "I will sign," he whispered. "Good boy." Gavin smiled. "Do it." Tevin pressed down. But as he did, he remembered something else I had given him. Not advice, not a lesson. A gift. Before the transport agents had come before the court hearing, I had given Tevin a watch. It looked like a cheap digital watch, the kind a kid would wear. But it was not cheap. It was a GPS tracker with a panic button linked directly to my phone. I had told him to only use it if he was in mortal danger because the battery only lasted for one burst. Tevin pretended to steady his hand on the clipboard. His other hand slipped under the cuff of his shirt. He found the small, indented button on the side of the watch case. He pressed it and held it for 3 seconds. In my war room across town, my phone began to scream. A red alert flashed on the screen with a map coordinate. It was coming from Gavin's house. I looked at Frank. I looked at Marcus. "He triggered it," I said, grabbing my keys. "He is in the house, and he is in trouble. We are moving." I did not call the local police. I did not call the sheriff. I picked up the phone and dialed the number the Attorney General had given me. The number for the tactical response team that handled high-risk warrants. "This is Jeremiah Brooks," I said as I ran to the truck. "Execute the warrant. We have a hostage situation at the Miller residence. Go, go, go." Gavin thought he had won. He thought he had forced a child to sign away his future. But he didn't know that the signal had already gone out. He didn't know that the cavalry was coming. And leading the charge was a grandfather with nothing left to lose. The pen shook in Tevin's hand, hovering over the paper that would sign away his life. The air in the basement was stale, smelling of mold and fear. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like tiny ghosts. Gavin stood over him, a dark silhouette of menace, the switchblade in his hand clicking open and closed, a rhythmic ticking of a countdown. "Sign it," Gavin hissed, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Do it now, or I swear to God I will go up there and run your grandfather off the road tonight. Do you want his blood on your hands, boy?" Tevin looked at the paper. The legal jargon blurred before his eyes. He felt a tear slide down his cheek, hot and stinging. He thought of me. He thought of the old truck and the fishing trips and the way I had stood on the porch with a shotgun ready to die for him. He knew I would not want him to sign. He knew I would want him to fight. "I need to steady the paper," Tevin whispered, his voice trembling. "The clipboard is slipping." He moved his left hand under his right wrist. It looked like a nervous tick, a child trying to compose himself. Gavin did not notice. Gavin was too focused on his victory, too blinded by the greed that was about to be satisfied. He did not see Tevin's finger slip under the cuff of his long-sleeved shirt. He did not see the thumb press down hard on the indented button of the cheap-looking digital watch. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. A tiny vibration buzzed against Tevin's wrist. It was the confirmation signal. The silent scream had been sent. "I am signing," Tevin said, letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Across the city in my dining room turned command center, the silence was shattered by a piercing electronic shriek. A red dot began to pulse on the laptop screen right over the address of the Miller residence. "Audio feed incoming," Marcus shouted, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The speakers crackled to life. Gavin's voice filled the room, distorted but unmistakable. "Good boy, now date it. And remember, if you tell anyone about this, if you say a word to the judge about duress, I will kill the old man." I stood up. The chair fell over behind me. The rage that had been simmering in my gut for weeks finally boiled over, but it was a cold, focused rage. The rage of the hammer. "Frank, get the truck," I said, grabbing my keys. "Marcus, keep recording. Do not lose a second of that audio. I did not dial 911. 911 was for accidents. 911 was for civilians. This was a tactical operation. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number I had saved for emergencies only, a number that bypassed the dispatchers and went straight to the desk of Commander Henderson, the head of the special response team. We had worked the cartel cases together in the 90s. He owed me his life. "Henderson here," a gruff voice answered. "Commander, it is Jeremiah Brooks. We have a code red." "Jeremiah, I haven't heard from you in years. What is happening?" "Active hostage situation at 142 Oak Creek Drive. Suspect is Gavin Miller. He is armed with a knife and holding a minor in the basement. He is also a primary suspect in a federal money laundering investigation involving the Vargas Syndicate. I have live audio confirmation of death threats against the hostage." There was a pause on the line, then the sound of a chair scraping back. "Vargas Syndicate. You are sure, Jeremiah? I have the files on my desk. He owes them $200,000. He is torturing the kid to get the payout. If we do not move now, he is going to kill the boy to cover his tracks. I need a warrant, Jeremiah. You know I cannot roll SWAT without paper. I am the warrant, Henderson." I barked, my voice channeling every ounce of authority I had left from my prosecutor days. "I have probable cause recorded on a secure server. I have the location. And I have a 16-year-old boy who is about to be executed. Roll the trucks. I will take full legal responsibility." I heard Henderson shouting orders in the background. "All right, Jeremiah. Alpha Team is 2 minutes out. We are rolling. Do not engage until we get there." I hung up and ran to my truck. Frank was already in the passenger seat, clutching a file folder. I peeled out of the driveway, the old Ford engine roaring like a beast. I drove fast, faster than I had driven in 20 years, weaving through traffic running red lights. "Hang on, Tevin," I whispered to the windshield. "Just hang on." Back in the basement, Gavin snatched the clipboard from Tevin's hands. He shined the light on the signature, inspecting it like a jeweler inspecting a diamond. Finally, he breathed a look of pure relief washing over his face. "You did the right thing, kid. You just bought yourself a future." He tucked the clipboard under his arm and turned toward the stairs. "Now get up. We are going upstairs. You are going to take a shower and put on long sleeves. Tomorrow we go to the bank. And if you act strange, if you blink wrong, I will finish what I started with your ribs." Tevin stood up, his legs shaking. He followed Gavin up the wooden stairs out of the darkness and into the kitchen. The house was quiet. Too quiet. "Where is Mom?" Tevin asked, his voice raspy from thirst. "She is in her room," Gavin said dismissively. "Probably crying. Or sleeping. It doesn't matter. She does what she is told. Just like you." Gavin walked to the fridge and pulled out a beer. He cracked it open, taking a long swig, celebrating his victory. He looked at the clock on the microwave. 11 p.m. Just enough time to get a few hours sleep before we go to the bank. Suddenly the room exploded with light. Blue and red beams cut through the curtains, strobing against the kitchen walls like a disco from hell. An amplified voice boomed from the front yard, shaking the windows. "Gavin Miller, this is the state police. The house is surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Gavin dropped the beer. The bottle shattered on the tile floor, foaming liquid spreading around his expensive shoes. He ran to the window and peeked through the blinds. "What the hell?" he whispered. Outside, the street was filled with armored vehicles. Men in full tactical gear were taking positions behind car doors and trees, their rifles trained on the front door. A helicopter chopped the air overhead, its spotlight pinning the house against the darkness. "You set me up!" Gavin screamed, spinning around to face Tevin. "You little rat! You called them. I didn't." Tevin cried, backing away until he hit the counter. "I didn't have a phone." Gavin's eyes darted around the room, wild and panicked. He realized the trap had sprung. He realized there was no bank trip tomorrow. There was only prison. He lunged at Tevin. He grabbed my grandson by the hair and yanked him backward. Tevin yelled in pain. Gavin reached into the knife block on the counter and pulled out a 10-inch chef's knife. He pressed the blade against Tevin's throat, the steel glinting in the strobe lights from outside. "If I'm going down, you are coming with me," Gavin hissed, his spit flying into Tevin's face. The phone on the wall rang. Gavin ignored it. "Come out, Miller," the megaphone boomed again. "We know you have the boy. Release him and surrender." "Never," Gavin screamed at the closed door. "You come in here and he dies. Do you hear me? He dies." He dragged Tevin backward toward the hallway, intending to use him as a human shield to get to the garage. Tevin was crying, tears streaming down his face, his hands gripping Gavin's forearm, trying to keep the knife from cutting his skin. Suddenly a shadow moved in the hallway. It was Latoya. She was standing in the doorway of the living room wearing her silk robe, her hair matted, her eyes red and swollen. She looked like a ghost haunting her own home. She had heard the sirens, she had heard the megaphone, and now she saw her husband holding a knife to her son's throat. "Gavin," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What are you doing? Let him go." "Get back." "Latoya," Gavin shouted, not loosening his grip. "Your father did this. That old man called the cops. He ruined everything." "Let him go," she repeated, her voice gaining a strange strength. "He is just a boy, Gavin. He signed the papers. You won. Just let him go." "I cannot let him go, you stupid woman," Gavin spat. "He is my ticket out of here. If I give him up, they will shoot me. Now move. Get the keys to the other car. You are going to drive." Latoya looked at Tevin. She saw the terror in his eyes. She saw the bruise on his cheek that was turning yellow and green. She looked at the knife pressing into the soft skin of his neck, and in that moment, something snapped. The spell broke. The fear that had paralyzed her for years, the need for approval, the desperation to maintain the illusion of a perfect family, it all shattered. She looked at Gavin, and she did not see a husband. She saw a monster. "No," she said. "What did you say?" Gavin snarled, stepping closer, dragging Tevin with him. "I said no." Latoya looked down. Leaning against the wall near the umbrella stand was Tevin's old aluminum baseball bat. It was dusty. It hadn't been used in years. She picked it up. Gavin laughed. A manic, incredulous sound. "What are you going to do with that, Latoya? You are going to hit me. You do not have the guts. Put it down and get the keys." Latoya gripped the handle. Her knuckles turned white. She thought about the lies. She thought about the mortgage fraud. She thought about the way he had isolated her from me. But mostly she thought about the cigarette burns on her son's back. "I am not your driver," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I am a mother." She swung. She did not swing like a girl. She swung like a woman possessed by the spirit of every mother who has ever defended her young. She put her hips into it. She put her rage into it. The aluminum bat connected with Gavin's forearm, the one holding the knife with a sickening crunch of shattering bone. Gavin screamed. It was a high-pitched sound of pure agony. His arm went limp, instantly useless. The knife clattered to the floor. "Run!" Tevin Latoya screamed. Tevin scrambled away, crawling across the floor to get away from Gavin, who was now clutching his broken arm, howling in pain. Gavin looked up at Latoya, shock written all over his face. "You broke my arm! You crazy witch, you broke my arm!" Latoya raised the bat again. Her eyes were dry now, cold. "Touch him again," she whispered. "Touch him again, and I will aim for your head." The front door crashed open with a deafening boom. A battering ram had done its work. "Police, get down! Get down!" Men in black armor poured into the hallway, rifles raised flashlights, blinding everyone. I was right behind them. I ignored the orders to stay back. I ran into the house, my eyes searching frantically. I saw Gavin on his knees, cradling his broken arm, whimpering. I saw Tevin huddled in the corner, shaking. And I saw my daughter standing over her husband, baseball bat in hand, looking like an avenging angel. "Daddy," she said, dropping the bat. "He tried to kill him." I ran to Tevin and pulled him into my arms. He buried his face in my coat, sobbing. "It is okay, son," I whispered, tears running down my own face. "It is over. I got you." Officers swarmed Gavin, forcing him face down onto the floor, cuffing his hands behind his back. He screamed as they manipulated his broken arm, but no one seemed to care much. "You have no proof," he yelled as they dragged him up. "This is assault. My wife attacked me. I am the victim here." I stood up, releasing Tevin into his mother's arms. I walked over to Gavin. He stopped struggling when he saw me. "Proof," I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my phone. I held it up, showing him the screen. The recording from the clock was paused on the frame where he held the knife to Tevin's throat. "I have video, Gavin. I have audio. I have the files from your computer. I have the testimony of the forger you hired. And I have a house full of SWAT officers who just saw you hold a knife to a child." Gavin sagged. The fight went out of him. He looked small suddenly, just a man in a ruined suit surrounded by the wreckage of his own greed. "You ruined my life," he whispered. "No, Gavin," I corrected him. "You ruined your own life. I just turned on the lights." "Take him away," Commander Henderson said. As they dragged him out the door, he looked back at Latoya. "Honey, call David. Call the lawyer. We can fix this." Latoya looked at him, holding her son tight. "Do not call me honey," she said. "My name is Ms. Brooks, and I hope you rot." The door closed. The house was filled with police collecting evidence, taking photos, securing the scene. I looked at my daughter and my grandson. They were battered. They were traumatized. But they were together, and they were safe. "We did it," Grandpa Tevin whispered. "Yes, we did, son." But the war wasn't completely over. Gavin was in custody, but men like him are slippery. He would try to deal. He would try to lie. I looked at the file Frank had given me, the one with the full extent of his crimes. Tomorrow I would walk into that interrogation room not as a grandfather, but as the Hammer, and I would make sure that Gavin Miller never saw the light of day again. The interrogation room at the precinct was a box of concrete and steel painted a color that was supposed to be calming, but only reminded me of old dishwater. It smelled of stale coffee and fear. I stood on the other side of the one-way glass, watching him. Gavin sat at the metal table, his hands cuffed to the steel ring bolted to the floor. He looked rough. His expensive suit was torn at the shoulder from where the tactical team had dragged him out. His broken arm was in a temporary sling the medics had applied, and his hair was a mess. But despite it all, the arrogance was still there. It radiated off him like heat from a pavement. He was yelling at the empty room. "I want my lawyer. You cannot hold me here. This is kidnapping. My attorney is David Chen, and he will have your badges for this. Do you know who I am? I am a pillar of this community." I watched him spin his wheels. He truly believed that this was just another bump in the road. He thought that by morning David Chen would file a motion, the judge would grant bail, and he would be back to terrorizing my family. He thought he was dealing with a system he could buy. He was wrong. I turned away from the glass and looked at my reflection in the mirror on the wall. The old man in the flannel shirt and work boots was gone. In his place stood Jeremiah Brooks. I was wearing my charcoal gray wool suit, the one I used to wear for closing arguments in capital murder cases. It was tailored perfectly to my frame. I adjusted my silk tie and straightened my cufflinks. I looked at my face. The grandfather was gone. The hammer was back. I picked up the thick manila folder from the desk. It weighed 5 pounds. 5 pounds of evidence. 5 pounds of doom. I nodded to Captain Miller. Cut the feed to the observation room, I said. Just record the audio for the official transcript. I want to talk to him man to man. The captain nodded. Give him hell, Jeremiah. I walked to the door. I took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of the precinct. This was my arena. This was where I had spent the best years of my life hunting monsters, and Gavin Miller was just another monster. I opened the heavy steel door and stepped inside. Gavin looked up. When he saw me, a sneer twisted his face. He laughed a short barking sound of disbelief. Well, look who it is. The mechanic. What are you doing here, Jeremiah? Did you come to beg me not to sue you? Did you come to apologize for breaking into my house? I did not answer. I walked to the table and pulled out the metal chair opposite him. The legs scraped loudly against the floor, a harsh sound that made him wince. I sat down slowly, deliberately. I placed the thick file on the table between us. I folded my hands on top of it and looked him in the eye. Gavin leaned back, trying to look relaxed despite the cuffs. You are wasting your time, old man. David is on his way. By sunrise, I will be out on bail and I will be pressing charges against you for assault, kidnapping, and filing a false police report. And Latoya? Oh, she is done. I will take everything. I will leave her with nothing but that brat son of hers. I waited. I let him talk. I let him dig. And you? Gavin continued, emboldened by my silence. I am going to ruin you. I will find every code violation in that shack you live in. I will have the city condemn your property. You will die in a state-run nursing home smelling of urine and regret. I smiled. It was a cold smile, a shark smile. Are you done? I asked. My voice was different. It was not the raspy voice of the grandfather. It was the resonant baritone of the prosecutor trained to project to the back row of a federal courtroom. Gavin frowned. He noticed the suit. He noticed the cufflinks. He noticed the change in my posture. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes for the first time. Where did you get the suit, Jeremiah? Goodwill. You look like a funeral director. I am a funeral director, Gavin, I said. And this is your wake. I opened the file. I did not look at the papers. I knew them by heart. You seem to be under the impression that I am Jeremiah, the retired mechanic who fixes alternators for extra cash. You think I am a senile old man who got lucky with a shotgun. I leaned forward. My name is Jeremiah Brooks. For 30 years, I served as the senior federal prosecutor for this district. I was the lead attorney on the RICO case that dismantled the East Side Gang. I prosecuted the mayor for corruption in '92. And most importantly, I was the man who put Hector Vargas in a supermax prison for life. Gavin went still. The name Vargas hit him like a physical blow. Vargas, he whispered. Yes, the father of the man you owe $200,000 to. The man whose syndicate you have been laundering money for. Gavin's face drained of color. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. I do not know what you are talking about. I am a real estate developer. I flipped open the file. I pulled out a stack of bank records. This is a trace of your shell companies, Gavin. Miller Construction, GM Holdings, Blue Sky Development, all registered to P.O. boxes in the Cayman Islands, all showing cash deposits structured to avoid IRS reporting requirements. You have been washing drug money for the Vargas cartel for 5 years. I tossed the papers at him. They slid across the table, scattering like dead leaves. That proves nothing, he stammered. Those are legitimate businesses. I pulled out another document. This is a forensic audit of your tax returns for the last 15 years. You have not paid a dime in federal income tax since 2008. You claim losses on properties that do not exist. That is tax evasion, Gavin. That is 20 years in federal prison right there before we even get to the money laundering. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. He tugged at his collar with his good hand. So what? You hacked my taxes. That is inadmissible. Nothing is inadmissible when it is obtained via a federal warrant, I said calmly, which I obtained this morning based on the probable cause of you holding a knife to a child's throat. I pulled out the third document, the one that hurt the most. This is the mortgage document for Latoya's house, the one you threatened her with. The handwriting expert verified it an hour ago. The signature is a forgery, a bad one. That is bank fraud. That is identity theft. That is another 15 years. Gavin was shaking now. The arrogance was melting away, leaving behind a terrified little man. You cannot prove I forged it. She signed it. She is lying. We found the scanner, Gavin. We found the digital files on your laptop. We found the practice sheets where you traced her signature over and over again. We have everything. I leaned back in my chair watching him unravel. You thought you were a wolf, Gavin. You thought you were preying on sheep, but you were just a scavenger eating scraps from the table of real criminals, and you made the mistake of trying to eat my family. Gavin looked at the file. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. Look, Jeremiah, Mr. Brooks, we can work this out. I can pay you. I have money stashed away. I can give you half. Just make the files disappear. The Vargas family will kill me if I go to prison. They will think I talked. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. You think I want your money. I have more money in my retirement account than you have ever seen in your life. I made smart investments in the 80s, Gavin. I own apartment complexes. I own land. I drove that old truck because I liked it, not because I had to. I stood up and walked around the table. I stood behind him, leaning down to whisper in his ear. But here is the final nail in your coffin, Gavin, the one that ensures you never see the light of day again. I pulled out a USB drive and placed it on the table in front of him. You were so paranoid. You were so obsessed with control. You installed hidden cameras in every room of your house to spy on LaToya. You wanted to catch her cheating. You wanted to catch her spending money. Gavin stopped breathing. He remembered the cameras. He had forgotten about them in his panic. You forgot to turn them off, Gavin. You forgot that they record to a local hard drive in your office. We seized that hard drive. I walked back to my chair and sat down. We have video, Gavin. High-definition video with audio. We have video of you beating Tevin. We have video of you burning him with cigarettes. We have video of you dragging him to the basement. We have video of you holding a knife to his throat. And we have video of you laughing about how you were going to steal his inheritance. Gavin put his head on the table. He let out a low moan of absolute despair. It is over, I said. David Chen isn't coming. I called his wife. She knows about your slush fund. She knows about the ethics violations. He won't touch this case with a 10-foot pole. You are alone. Gavin looked up. His face was a mask of terror. Please, he begged. Please, Jeremiah, I am sorry. I will sign whatever you want. I will give LaToya the house. I will leave town. Just do not give that video to the DA. The guys in prison, if they see what I did to a kid, they will kill me. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tortured my grandson. I looked at the man who had beaten my daughter. I felt no pity. I felt no mercy. I felt only the cold, hard weight of justice. You should have thought about that before you put a cigarette out on a child's skin, I said. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I am not just giving the video to the DA, Gavin. I am giving it to the federal prosecutor handling the RICO case against the Vargas syndicate. I am going to make sure you are named as a primary conspirator. You are going to federal prison, Gavin. And when you get there, everyone will know exactly who you are and what you did. I turned to the door. Wait! Gavin screamed, pulling at his cuffs. Wait, Jeremiah, please. We are family. I married your daughter. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. I looked back at him one last time. You were never family, Gavin. You were just a trespasser. And now you are evicted. I walked out of the room. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind me, cutting off his screams. Captain Miller was waiting for me in the hallway. He handed me a cup of coffee. That was brutal, Jeremiah. It was necessary, I said, taking the cup. Is the transport ready? Yes. We are moving him to county tonight. Isolation cell, suicide watch. Good. Keep him alive, Miller. I want him to live a long, long time. I walked out of the station. The night air was cool and clean. I took a deep breath, letting the stench of the interrogation room fade from my lungs. I had destroyed him. I had stripped him of his money, his reputation, and his freedom. I had used the law, the very thing he thought he could manipulate, to crush him into dust. But the work was not done. Gavin was gone, but the wounds he left behind were deep. I had a daughter to heal. I had a grandson to raise. I walked to my truck. I took off my suit jacket and tossed it on the seat. I rolled up my sleeves. It was time to go home. It was time to be a grandfather again. The door to the interrogation room opened, but it was not a guard who entered. It was David Chen. Gavin's lawyer walked in looking like he had just run a marathon in a three-piece suit. His hair was disheveled and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead that the fluorescent lights picked up mercilessly. He was holding a briefcase, but he did not set it down. He did not sit. He stood by the door, his hands still on the handle as if he needed an escape route. Gavin looked up, his eyes lighting with a desperate hope. "David, thank God. You have to get me out of here. This old man is crazy. He has hacked files. He has illegal recordings. You need to file a motion to suppress immediately. Get the judge on the phone." David did not move. He looked at Gavin, then he looked at me. He looked at the thick file on the table, the one stamped with the seal of the federal prosecutor's office. He looked at the USB drive. And then he looked at me again. He saw the hammer. He saw a man who had already made the phone call that ended his career if he took one step further into this mess. "I cannot help you, Gavin," David said, his voice flat. "What do you mean you cannot help me?" Gavin screamed, pulling against his cuffs. "I pay you a retainer. You work for me. Fix this." David shook his head slowly. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing the retainer against a federal indictment for conspiracy. It was not a hard choice. I saw the file, Gavin. I saw the emails from the Vargas syndicate. I saw the forged mortgage documents. This is not a defense case. This is a RICO predicate. If I touch this, I become part of the chain. I am not going to federal prison for you. "You coward," Gavin spat. "You took my money, and I am keeping it," David replied, cold as ice. "Consider it payment for the advice I'm about to give you. Do not say another word. Pleading guilty is the only way you might see the outside world before you are 80. David turned to me. He nodded once, a gesture of surrender and respect from one shark to a bigger one. "Mr. Brooks, please tell Margaret I did the right thing." He turned and walked out. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing Gavin's fate. The silence that followed was absolute. Gavin stared at the door, his mouth open, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The reality of his situation crashed down on him like a collapsing building. He was alone. The money was gone. The lawyer was gone. The power was gone. He turned his gaze to me. The arrogance that had defined him for years, the sneer that he had worn like armor, was gone. In its place was the terrified expression of a child who realizes the monsters under the bed are real. "Jeremiah," he whispered. I did not answer. I sat stone still, watching him unravel. "Jeremiah, please. We are family." I stood up slowly, buttoning my jacket. I picked up the file. "We are not family, Gavin." "But I married your daughter," he pleaded, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the grime and sweat. "I lived in your house. We ate dinner together. I made mistakes, okay. I got in over my head with the gambling. I was scared. You know what fear does to a man. You have to understand. I understand fear." I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. "I understand the fear my grandson felt when you burned him with cigarettes. I understand the fear my daughter felt when you threatened to put her on the street. That is fear. What you are feeling is not fear. It is consequence." He began to weep, ugly sobbing sounds that echoed off the concrete walls. "Do not let them put me in general population. You know what they do to guys who hurt kids. You were a prosecutor. You know. They will kill me, Jeremiah. Please, help me get a deal. Help me get protective custody. I will give you everything. I will sign the house over. I will disappear." I looked at him one last time. I looked at the man who had called me a failed generation. I looked at the man who thought he could buy and sell human beings. "I cannot help you, Gavin. I am not your lawyer. I am the witness." "But I am your son-in-law," he wailed, reaching out his cuffed hands as if to grab my coat. "I am LaToya's husband." I leaned in close, my voice a whisper that carried more weight than a scream. "You were never my son. You were never a husband. You were a parasite. And I just called the exterminator." I turned my back on him. His screams followed me out the door, begging, pleading, bargaining with a God he had never believed in until this moment. "Jeremiah, wait. Daddy, please." I closed the door. The sound cut off instantly. I took a deep breath of the hallway air. It tasted like victory, but it was a bitter victory. I had won the war, but the battlefield was littered with the wreckage of my family. I walked down the long corridor toward the precinct lobby. My steps were heavy. I felt every one of my 69 years in my knees and my back. I wanted to go home. I wanted to sit on my porch and listen to the crickets. But I had one more confrontation to face. LaToya was sitting on a plastic chair in the waiting area. Tevin was next to her, his head resting on her shoulder, fast asleep despite the chaos. He looked peaceful for the first time in weeks, safely surrounded by the fluorescent lights of the police station. LaToya looked up when she saw me. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen almost shut. Her cheek was purple where Gavin had slapped her. She was holding a cup of cold coffee, her hands trembling so hard the liquid rippled. When she saw my face, she knew. She knew it was over. She knew Gavin was gone. She stood up gently, moving Tevin so he would not wake. She walked toward me. She did not run. She walked with the hesitation of a child who knows they have broken something that cannot be fixed. She stopped 3 feet away from me. She looked at my suit. She looked at the file in my hand. She saw the father she had not seen in years. The hammer. "Daddy," she whispered. I did not say anything. I just looked at her. I looked at the woman who had led a wolf into the sheepfold. I looked at the woman who had watched her son suffer and looked away because she was afraid of being alone. She saw the judgment in my eyes. She saw the disappointment. She dropped to her knees. It was not a theatrical gesture. Her legs simply gave out under the weight of her guilt. She collapsed onto the dirty tile floor of the police station lobby, right in front of the desk sergeant and the other families waiting for bail hearings. She bowed her head, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I am sorry," she choked out. "I am so sorry, Daddy. I was so stupid. I was so blind." I looked down at her. Part of me wanted to pull her up. Part of me wanted to hold her and tell her it was not her fault that she was a victim too. But that would have been a lie. She was a victim, yes, but she was also an accomplice. Her silence had been Gavin's greatest weapon. "Forgive me," she begged, clutching the hem of my trousers. "Please, Daddy. I will do anything. I will leave him. I will divorce him. I just want to come home. I want us to be a family again." I looked over her head at Tevin. He was stirring, waking up. He rubbed his eyes and saw his mother on the floor. He didn't move. He didn't run to her. He just watched. He was 16, but his eyes were 1,000 years old. He had learned the hardest lesson of all. Parents are just people, and some people are weak. I reached down and took LaToya's hands. They were cold. I pulled her up. She stood unsteadily, looking at me with desperate hope. "Get up, LaToya," I said, my voice gentle but firm as steel. "Brooks do not crawl." She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Can we go home now, Daddy? Can we go back to your house?" I looked at her. I loved her. God knows I loved her. She was my only child. But love requires truth. And the truth was, she was not fit to be a mother right now. She was broken, and until she fixed herself, she was dangerous. "I am going to fix the house, LaToya," I said. Her face brightened. "You are?" "Yes. I made some calls. I am buying the note from the bank. I am paying off the mortgage Gavin took out. The house your mother left you will not be foreclosed. It is safe. It is yours." She sobbed in relief, reaching out to hug me. Thank you, Daddy. I knew you would fix it. We can move back in tomorrow. We can start over, me and you and Tevin." I stepped back, avoiding her embrace. "No, LaToya." She froze. "What? You are moving back in. You. Alone." She looked at me, confusion clouding her eyes. "But what about Tevin?" I looked over at my grandson. He was sitting up now, watching us. He knew. He knew what I was going to say before I said it. "Tevin is coming with me," I said. LaToya gasped. No, Daddy, you cannot take my son. He is all I have left. He is not a possession, LaToya," I said, my voice hardening. "He is a boy. A boy who was tortured in your home while you sat in the next room watching TV. A boy who has cigarette burns on his skin because you were too afraid to lose a man who treated you like a servant." "I didn't know," she wailed. "You chose not to know," I countered. "And that is worse. You chose comfort over his safety. You chose a lie over the truth, and because of that, you lost the right to protect him." She started to shake her head, backing away. "No, I am his mother. I love him. I know you love him, but love is not enough. You need help, LaToya. You have been abused, you have been manipulated, and you have lost your way. You need therapy. You need to find out who you are without a man telling you. You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet." I pulled a card from my pocket. It was the business card for a trauma counselor, a woman I trusted implicitly. "You are going to call this number tomorrow. You are going to go to every session. You are going to get a job. You are going to pay your own bills. You are going to learn how to be LaToya Brooks again. And Tevin," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, Tevin will live with me, I said. I will take him to school. I will help him with his math. I will make sure he eats. And on weekends, if you are doing the work, if you are sober and stable, you can visit. Visit, she choked out. Like I am the one in prison. You are in a prison, Latoya, I said softly. A prison of your own making. And this is the only way you get out. She looked at me. She looked for the father who would fix everything, who would pat her head and tell her it was okay. She didn't find him. She found the father who loved her enough to let her grow up. She turned to Tevin. Tevin, baby, tell him. Tell him you want to be with Mommy. Tevin stood up. He walked over to us. He stood next to me, his shoulder brushing against my arm. He looked at his mother. Mom, I love you, he said, his voice steady. But I can't go with you. Not yet. I do not feel safe. The words hit her harder than Gavin's fist. Her own son did not feel safe with her. She crumbled. She nodded slowly, accepting the sentence. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I will do the work. I will fix this. I kissed her forehead. I know you will, sugar. You are a Brooks. We survive. I handed her the keys to a rental car I had arranged. Go to the hotel tonight. I will meet you at the house tomorrow with the locksmith. We will change the locks. We will start the process. She took the keys. She looked at Tevin one last time, a look of pure longing and regret. Then she turned and walked out of the station. She walked alone. I watched her go. My heart ached, but I knew it was the only way. I turned to Tevin. Ready to go home, son? He looked up at me. Is it over, Grandpa? The part with Gavin is over, I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. Now comes the hard part, the healing. But we will do it together. We walked out of the station into the cool night air. The stars were out. It was a new day. And for the first time, in a long time, I felt like the future was something we could build, not just something we had to survive. The seasons changed as they always do, turning the humid heat of summer into the crisp gold of autumn, and then the biting cold of winter before settling into a glorious green spring. It has been exactly 1 year since the night the SWAT team kicked down the door of the Miller residence. 1 year since the silence of my home was replaced by the sounds of a teenage boy living his life without fear. I stood on the newly reinforced porch of my farmhouse holding a cup of coffee, watching the mailman drive away. Tevin was sitting on the swing, his long legs stretched out, his eyes focused on the thick envelope in his hands. He was 17 now. He had grown 3 inches in the last 12 months. The shadows under his eyes were gone. The flinch he used to have whenever someone moved too fast was gone. He looked like a young king holding court. Open it, son, I said, taking a sip of the dark roast. It is not going to read itself. His hands shook slightly, not from terror, but from anticipation. He tore the strip off the top of the envelope. He pulled out the heavy cream-colored paper. He read it in silence, his lips moving slightly. Then he looked up at me, and a smile broke across his face that shone brighter than the morning sun. Grandpa, he whispered, I got in. Read it to me. He cleared his throat, standing up to project his voice. Dear Mr. Brooks, it is our distinct pleasure to inform you that you have been admitted to the Harvard University class of 2027. Harvard. My grandson, the boy who had been locked in a basement and told he was worthless, was going to Harvard. He was going to walk the same halls as presidents and Supreme Court justices. He was going to be a lawyer. I put my coffee down and walked over to him, pulling him into a bear hug. I felt his strength. He was solid now, unbreakable. I knew it. I said, my voice thick with pride. I never doubted it for a second. Come inside, Grandpa, Tevin said. Let us put it in the library. We walked into the house. It did not look like the same place Gavin had sneered at a year ago. I had spent some of my retirement money not on cars or clothes, but on the one thing that mattered to me. I had knocked down the wall between the living room and the spare bedroom. I had installed floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, and I had filled them. The secret was out now. The neighbors knew. The town knew. Jeremiah Brooks was not just a mechanic. My home was now a sanctuary of jurisprudence. Thousands of leather-bound law books lined the walls. Case studies, criminal codes, histories of civil rights litigation. In the center of the room sat a massive oak desk where Tevin had spent every night for the last year studying not just for school but learning the law. I had taught him everything. I taught him how to build an argument, how to spot a lie, how to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. He walked to the central shelf, the one reserved for our victories. He placed the acceptance letter next to the frame that held the newspaper clipping of Gavin's sentencing. "It fits," he said. "It fits perfectly, son." The house smelled of old paper and lemon oil. It smelled of peace. We had reclaimed our lives. We had built a fortress not of guns but of knowledge. And from this fortress, Tevin would launch a life that Gavin Miller could never have imagined. Speaking of Gavin, his fate had been sealed with the heavy finality of a coffin lid. The trial had been swift. With the mountain of evidence we had compiled, the federal prosecutors did not have to work very hard. They just had to point and shoot. Gavin was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison. No parole. The judge, a stern woman who had no patience for men who hurt children, threw the book at him. She called him a predator, a parasite, and a danger to society. But the real sentence did not come from the bench. It came from the yard. I still have friends in the system. Wardens, guards, counselors. I hear things. I know exactly what Gavin's life looks like now. He is at a maximum security facility in Terre Haute. He is not in the white-collar wing. Because of the violent nature of his crime, specifically the torture of a minor, he was placed in general population. And in prison, there is a hierarchy. At the bottom of that hierarchy, below the rats and the thieves, are the men who hurt children. Gavin tried to buy protection. He tried to use his arrogance and his mouth to talk his way into a crew, but he had no money left. I had seen to that. The IRS had stripped him of every asset he owned to pay back taxes and penalties. The bank had seized his properties. He was destitute. Without money and without respect, he became a target. I heard he spends 23 hours a day in his cell because he is too terrified to go to the yard. I heard he has lost 30 pounds. I heard he cries at night. Last week, a guard told me that Gavin tried to file a complaint because someone had put crushed glass in his meatloaf. The warden told him it was an accident, just like Richard's death was an accident, just like the cigarette burns on Tevin's back were accidents. Justice inside those walls is brutal and it is constant. Gavin wanted to be a big man. He wanted to dominate. Now he is the smallest man in a world of giants. He is living the nightmare he tried to inflict on my grandson. He is trapped, he is scared, and he is alone. He will die in there, and when he does, there will be no funeral, there will be no mourning. He will simply cease to exist, a bad memory erased by time and consequence. LaToya's journey has been different. It has been harder in some ways because she has had to live with her freedom and her guilt. She lives in a small apartment on the other side of town. It is a walk-up one-bedroom place with peeling paint and noisy neighbors. It is a far cry from the suburban palace she shared with Gavin. But she pays for it herself. She got a job managing a bakery downtown. She wakes up at 4 in the morning every day. She kneads dough, she manages inventory, she deals with customers. Her hands are rough now, covered in flour and hard work. She looks 10 years older than she did a year ago, but she also looks real. The vacuous, desperate look is gone, replaced by a weary determination. She goes to therapy twice a week. She sits in a room and unpacks the years of manipulation, the weakness that let her sacrifice her son for comfort. It is ugly work. She cries a lot, but she keeps going. We see her on Sundays. The first few visits were excruciating. Tevin would sit on the porch stiff as a board while LaToya sat on the steps trying to make conversation. She would ask about school. He would give one-word answers. She would bring cookies she baked. He would say thank you and not eat them. But time is a river. It erodes even the sharpest rocks. Last Sunday she came over. She looked tired. She had worked a double shift. She sat down on the swing next to Tevin. "I heard you applied to Harvard," she said softly. Tevin nodded. "I did. I am so proud of you, Tevin. I know I do not have the right to be, but I am. You are everything I wish I was. Smart, brave, strong." Tevin looked at her. He saw the flower in her hair. He saw the dark circles under her eyes. He saw a woman who was trying to rebuild herself from the ashes. "You are getting stronger, Mom," he said. LaToya started to cry. She tried to hide it, turning her head away. Tevin reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her in a year. "Do not cry, Mom. Grandpa says we move forward." She squeezed his hand. "I am trying, baby. I am trying so hard. It will take years. Maybe they will never be fully close again. The trust was shattered, and you cannot glue glass back together without seeing the cracks. But they are trying, and that is enough. She is learning that love is not about being rescued by a man. It is about rescuing yourself so you can be there for your people. I sat on the porch as the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of purple and fire. I looked at my truck parked in the driveway. The paint was peeling and the bumper was dented, but the engine was sound. It ran perfectly. People drove past my house every day. They saw an old black man sitting on a porch in a rocking chair. They saw the gray beard and the work boots. They thought they knew my story. They thought I was just another retiree waiting for the end. They had no idea. They didn't know that inside that house was the future of the legal system. They didn't know that beneath this flannel shirt beat the heart of a prosecutor who had taken down a criminal syndicate to save his family. Justice is a funny thing. People think it comes from judges in robes sitting on high benches. They think it comes from gavels and verdicts. And sometimes it does. But real justice often happens in the dark. It happens when good people decide they have had enough. It happens when a grandfather decides that no one is going to hurt his blood. Gavin Miller made a mistake. He looked at me and he saw a victim. He saw my skin color, he saw my age, he saw my poverty, and he assumed I was weak. He assumed I was powerless. He forgot that power does not roar. Power whispers, power waits, power plans. I took a sip of my coffee. It was cold now, but I drank it anyway. Never underestimate an old man with a plan, I whispered to the empty air. We are the dangerous ones. We have lived long enough to know where the bodies are buried, and we have lived long enough to know how to dig fresh graves for those who deserve them. Tevin came out onto the porch. Grandpa, are you coming inside? We have to review the tort law chapter before dinner. I smiled. The hammer was retired, but the professor was just getting started. I am coming, son. I stood up. I looked down the road one last time. It was empty. Gavin was gone. The threat was gone. My family was safe. And if anyone else ever tried to come for us, if anyone ever tried to hurt my boy again, they would find out that the hammer does not rust. It just waits for the next nail. I turned off the porch light and walked inside, closing the door on the past and stepping into the future I had built with my own two hands. This journey taught me that family is not defined by bloodlines, but by the battle lines we are willing to draw to protect one another. True strength is not found in expensive suits or empty threats. It is found in the quiet resolve to do what is right, no matter the cost. Gavin made the fatal mistake of confusing silence with weakness and age with obsolescence. He learned too late that the fiercest wolves often look like sleeping dogs. Never let anyone define your worth or threaten your kin, because when the system fails, you must become the system. Justice is not given, it is forged. If you believe in protecting family at all costs, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served. Cold, and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to a bully in your own home?